All right, Power Conference. Let's get this party started. To everybody that's already logged on, welcome. For all of you guys who are logging on right now, welcome. So fired up about tonight, the opening night of the Power Conference 2020. I'm one of the co-founders. I'm Zach Woodfin. I'm the Director of Athletic Performance at the University of Missouri, and just fired up to bring this to you. We have a great lineup tonight. We'll get to that in a little bit. I wanted to start off again, just share our vision. What I want you guys to get out of tonight, out of next Tuesday and next Thursday night, is really the message of your power as a coach or a trainer or a nutritionist or even a leader, to really have life-altering change on those people that you coach or you lead. It does take a lot of intentionality to do that. And the Power Conference is all about giving you those tools to make change. And some of the tools are being absolutely great in athletic performance or in nutrition. But a lot of these tools we're going to share with you tonight are how to be great in building the relationships and really making change through the person. So you coach them for the fifth quarter, as we call it, and that fifth quarter is the rest of their life after they leave you. So that's what we want to get out of it, want you to get out of it tonight. I'm going to introduce you guys to our co-founder. So Anthony Lamondo, he's really the one that had the vision and dreamed this Power Conference up. He told me about it. We've been friends for a long time, and we came together and created this 5 years ago. So Anthony, why don't you just give us a little bit of a history of Power Conference and kind of what caused you to dream this up and get this going?
Thanks, Zach. In 2015-16 season, I was blessed to be a part of a Super Bowl winning team with the Denver Broncos as an assistant strength coach. Amazing experience, amazing time to win a championship. But after the season, I was kind of left with a little bit of kind of like, is this it type of feeling. And, I thought back to that year and I thought the things I remember most, obviously the wins, but really was the relationships that I built with the guys and a player in specific, where we really connected on a lot of things beyond just the weight room and the field. So, I called Zach and I said, Zach, is there anything out there conference-wise that kind of talks about connecting with the athlete, right? How do we impact the athlete? There's all sorts of performance conferences, but kind of wanted to do something different. So Zach and I came together and we decided to start the Power Conference. And so bringing you guys the best of the performance presentations, but also great speakers and influencers who will help you be able to connect with your athletes and impact them beyond the weight room and beyond the field. So Zach and I are really excited for y'all to be here tonight, through everything going on, that we're still able to do it. And without further ado, I'm going to turn it back to Zach.
All right. Anthony, thank you. Thank you so much for that. Before I introduce our first speaker of the night, I want to recognize our sponsors. We've got unbelievable sponsors, the best of the best in the business, and they've really stayed with us throughout this whole time of uncertainty. So just to start that, Hawkin Dynamics, Powerlift, Catapult, Matrix, Sorinex, Alico, Therabody, Play, and Momentous. These are unbelievable companies that we'll be talking about throughout the evening, but really wanted to just say thank you to them. Without them, we wouldn't be able to pull this off with all these great speakers. So thank you to our sponsors. So our first speaker of the night is going to be Ricky Ng. Ricky and I have been friends for quite some time now. We've worked together. I first met Ricky when I was at the University of Southern Mississippi. Ricky was living in Canada, applied to really a free internship just because he wanted to come and learn about American football and how this all happened in America. And he came down, and man, I was blown away from the very start, not just with his knowledge, of fueling and recovery, but who he is as a person, how he related to the athletes, the buy-in he got from the athletes. I left Southern Miss and went to Kansas. Thankfully, Ricky joined me at Kansas for a little while, and so we got to work together again. And I continue just to see, man, somebody who would go above and beyond for his athletes, and they remembered him. And so, obviously, Ricky has moved on to the Las Vegas Raiders. It sounds it's hard to say that, but Las Vegas Raiders. He's a director of performance nutrition, and he's going to start us off tonight, guys. So welcome, Ricky Ing. Let's hear it, Ricky.
All right. Thanks, Zach. Thanks, Anthony, for the intro here. I'm just going to pop up the presentation on screen here. Let me know. Hopefully you guys are able to see the first slide for the presentation. All right. Just want to make sure the first slide is up. All right, looks like it is. Okay, so just wanted to get started here. First of all, thanks for having me being one of the first speakers to the Power Conference 2020. It's pretty surreal to be one of the speakers here because when Zach asked me to present, especially during these very reflective times, we had just landed in Las Vegas. Team is transitioning over to Oakland, and it really brought me back to the first Power Conference that was set up by Zach and Anthony, and from that conference on, and how much of an impact that conference had on me with the people that I met, with the lessons that were shared along the way, and how it's truly impacted me in my practice today. The real and the raw content that was shared amongst the different speakers. It was very different than your typical conference that you went to, where a lot of it is sharing research and sharing literature and sharing a lot of data. This was really unique because the practitioners all shared a wealth of experience that one could use and one could really start to apply immediately in their practice. And I'm hoping, yes.
I can't see your screen, just wanted to.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, thank you. Let me see here. Let me go back to Zoom here. All right. Just looking for the option to share screen here. All right, share screen. How's that? I'm gonna get it up in the presentation format. How's that?
Good.
All right, perfect. All right, it's all right because I haven't hopped over any slides yet. And so just giving a little bit of a background here. Yeah, so when it came to the content of the presenters, it really resonated with me, and just the ability to have a really cool wrap up at that meeting where you met a lot of practitioners that were experiencing a lot of the same things. And it was reassuring because you realize that sometimes you're in a position where you feel like you're operating in silos, but when you really break it down and you attend a conference like the Power Conference, you start to see a lot of people that are really experiencing the same common hurdles that you're experiencing on a daily. And it was a really good opportunity to share through experience strategies that you could implement right away. And with the first Power Conference 1, I just had really good memories of it, where we had loaded up a bunch of the strength and conditioning coaches, myself, onto one of the KU buses, and we drove about 8 to 9 hours to Denver, and 8 to 9 hours back, and you would think you'd be pretty exhausted and being on the road for that long in a small bus. But when we came back, it was extremely refreshing, and you were extremely motivated and just ready to go, ready to try new things, ready to implement some new strategies. So those are some of the things that I've had time to take the last week to really reflect on and as part of my presentation today, I want to share some of the top 5 lessons that I've learned in my transition throughout various programs, and some of the best information and best advice that's been provided to me that has really shaped and redirected my practice in working with athletes and coaches. So to break down the Power Conference, I really wanted to define for myself what does the word power mean? Because there can be a lot of positive and negative connotations associated with the word power. And this was by far my favorite definition that I found online. And it is the capacity or ability to direct or influence the behavior of others or the course of events. And the degree and the magnitude of capacity and ability are shaped by our experiences, both positive and negative. If we can really learn as much from our negative experiences as we do from our positives, our skill set, adaptability, and ability to seek opportunities to impact those around us will be great, especially during times like this. It's not the easiest of times, especially in anybody's world. We just got off a 2-hour meeting about COVID-19 protocols and how that's going to redirect everything that we had created, all the systems that were created. And through this, there's going to be a lot of growth coming from all of the different departments, from all the players, from all of the personnel. And we're going to become a lot stronger in working together through some of these trying times. And especially during times like this, it's okay to be frustrated. Know that it's okay to be frustrated. You're allowed to be, but having the cognizance to be able to ask yourself, what positives can I gain from this? And if you can do that with every situation, you're going to have a very different outlook, and the rate of growth as a practitioner will skyrocket because it's going to apply to many different facets. So I want to take this opportunity to highlight the major stops where I learned some of my biggest lessons as a practitioner. So I started off working in private practice consulting, and this was an environment where teams and athletes were paying for a service, and as a result, expectations and demands for measurable outcomes and improvements are in an all-time high, a very high pressure environment. And you quickly learn to manage realistic expectations and sometimes underselling and really over-delivering on servicing. And that type of mindset has really allowed me to work well with management teams because we don't just work with players on a daily, we work with management, we work with a lot of different stakeholders. Consultancy was a really great way to open my eyes into the challenge that you experience every day, because you would normally be allotted a very limited hours to work with players, and you really had to maximize those hours into accomplishing viable, measurable outcomes while trying to build relationships with players. So those two in and of itself are two very different projects. And it was actually during that time in working with the Edmonton Eskimos Football Club that I got to meet one of the players who was nearing the end of his career. His career ended up spanning about 10 years and had made several stops between the NFL before finishing his career in the CFL. And through that, he was extremely open in sharing his experiences, both positive and negative, into the different nutrition coaches and the different nutrition experience that he had, and really made me want to learn more about American football and improving my style as a clinician, as a practitioner, to further understand how to better service these athletes. And that's what prompted me to apply to Southern Miss and apply down there as a graduate assistant. Initially, I looked at it as a chance to go down for 2 years and come back up to Canada and elevate practice even more. And as soon as I hit Southern Mississippi and eventually transitioned over to KU, it was a great lesson learning that you had a lot more time to build up relationships and trust with players, even before having to work on nutrition knowledge. And spending the 2 years working alongside Zach, I really developed a high level of respect for his passion, consistency, and it was very obvious the way that he carried himself to earn the respect of athletes, coaches, and management, regardless of their status in an athletic program. So that was a huge lesson learned, is it's all about relationship building regardless of what level, and seeing him demonstrate this every single day, never having an off day, was incredible to witness and experience. After that, I had to return to Canada and ended up working in a completely different sport altogether. Worked with Triathlon Alberta, very different age group. It was really a big focus on long-term athlete development, and really making sure that when they were off on their own, they were very self-sufficient, because oftentimes they're traveling with very small teams. So it was a lot of hard coaching to these athletes who were quite a bit younger, at the age of 12 to 15, and really trying to get them ready for travel and be very self-sufficient, so that we could at least have a handful of them be eligible for the next round of Olympics. After that, as I was working through Triathlon Alberta, I ended up getting a call from the Oakland Raiders, and it just so happened that the player that I had previously worked with the Edmonton Eskimos years and years back had put my name out there as a potential candidate for their performance nutrition director position. So it just goes to show it's really a small world out there, and the impact that you have with your athletes in this very moment, it could really reshape or redefine your career years to come. It may not be immediate, but you can never go wrong with really treating every single athlete like they're your own kid. And then working with the Raiders, it really it was eye-opening with the urgency to adapt and learn on the fly, not just as a clinician, but the players that were coming through. The risk of failure and exit from football is very real for these guys. You're always seeing players turn over, and it's really at this level that life skills not learned in college are quickly revealed and exposed at this level, which really has prompted us to take an approach with coaching athletes and doing what we call pressure coaching. So not so much pressure cooking, where you're trying to cook something in a short amount of time, but pressure coaching, where you're trying to coach them hard for a short period of time, and really allowing them to take on more than they have in the past, and holding them to it, holding them accountable to it. And so it's a lot more hands-on coaching that we're really trying to do, so that in the event that these players have to leave the program or they are off on their own, they can be as self-sufficient as they can be. So I'm going to get into the top 5 lessons that I've learned along the way in stepping through these programs. Lesson number 5, the view from 30,000 feet. This is the bird's eye view. And going into any program, any new system, it never hurts to remind yourself that you are the pilot of the performance arm that you oversee. It's okay to fly around and to look for the most strategic place to land, so that when you land, you're on top of a strong foundation to carry out your skill set. What I mean by that is, anytime you go into a new program, it's like a pilot going into a new city. You got to take a look around first to see what the lay of the land looks like before trying to dive in and start to create a lot of initiatives that may be misaligned with the program. Success lies in being able to grade priorities and channel your focus and attention into the objectives that matter, and not just doing what everybody else is doing. I found that very early on in my practice. I would be calling different practitioners, or as I was talking to other practitioners, I would think, you know what, I got to start doing this too. And before you know it, you start to roll a lot of initiatives out simultaneously, and you quickly realize you're doing none of them well. And I'm going to close off the slide just saying that 365 days of focus towards the wrong objectives is going to be very different and going to lead to very different outcomes than 365 days focused on the right objectives. I wanted to use this to highlight what the different programs I've been fortunate to have been a part of. And that in every program that you walk into, in every system, or even every athlete that you work with, you're obviously trying to get them better, but knowing that it's never that one size fits all approach. There's many different paths to take. Some of the paths are linear. Working with some athletes, you may find that you may have to take a bit of a detour. You're not going to build that relationship or see those results right away. but it's okay. The biggest key is that adaptability. And want to break this down a little bit further. So going into any program, one of the biggest things that's really helped me out and hopefully can help you out as well is as you're taking that 30,000 feet view, it's being able to identify who are the stakeholders that you're working with on a daily basis, beyond just players. Because really a lot of the decision makers, a lot of the supporters around you it is going to be players, but there's going to be a lot of other individuals that are involved as well, such as executives, position coaches, individuals from the medical and culinary team. Working synergistically well with them is really going to enhance the program to new heights. Identify the program stage. So where is this program at from an evolution standpoint? Are they more of a traditional athletic program? Is it more of a cutting edge program? Are they trying to drive a lot of R&D initiatives, research and development initiatives? Knowing where a program stands is really going to allow you to hone in on where you want to place your attention. So as a sport dietitian, there's a lot of things that we can do. It's knowing when to turn the on and off switch with any of these agenda items. So things like supplementation, body comp testing, sweat, saliva, blood testing, working with athletes on travel, working with athletes on retirement. I can tell you right now, even with my role here, we're assembling the first culinary team that this team has ever put together. And so a lot of my work has suddenly transitioned now. We've hit the on switch for the development of the culinary team. So looking at team assembly, understanding the Las Vegas market, working on menu design with some very well-qualified chefs and understanding cross-utilization and how do you maximize your budget and create systems that will result in minimized turnover with your staff. Because in other programs that I've worked at, especially at the professional level, some of the things that we really struggled with was the rapid turnover of our culinary team as a result of a lot of back of the house management systems not being well executed. It led us down a path where we had a very difficult time creating consistency. So that leads me into the next lesson. Being busy does not mean being productive. So sport operates with a lot of urgency. So don't let your quality of work be deviated in trying to keep up with the chaos of sport. Know that sometimes less is more. And we tell athletes all the time, and this happened at the college level. This definitely happens at the professional level as well, where some athletes will come in and they try to do too much. And at a certain point, there's going to be diminishing return. A small number of strategically laid out tasks done at a high level will always trump spreading yourself thin and trying to do everything with mediocrity. And that's one of the biggest lessons that I've seen as an evolution, being a sport nutrition practitioner, that programs would much rather you do a single task or fewer tasks well. They'll appreciate you much more than you trying to multitask and take on everything and doing any of those tasks at a mediocre level. It will allow you to have improved career longevity. It will allow you to be able to do the things that you want to do that very well. And as a result, everybody is going to be benefiting from that around you, whether it be players, management, medical team. It doesn't pay off to work in chaos. Lesson number 3, look under the hood. And so one of the biggest and I actually tried to stay away from nutrition research slides, but I couldn't resist. I had to throw one in there. This is one of the biggest areas in sport nutrition right now, is the utilization of nutrigenomics, and realizing that with different athletes, their exposure to a single nutrient, depending on the genes that they are operating with, can lead to very different outcomes. So you could give the same dose, same supplement to an athlete that is the same size based on height and weight. but their outcomes can be completely different because of how they're genetically built. A lot of the research has stemmed around caffeine supplementation, where they've seen improvements, no effect, and even impairments in performance in athletes who are supplementing. And this not just applies in supplementation and micronutrients, but it also applies to coaching as well. So over time, humility is knowing that sometimes the best support a practitioner can offer is to align an athlete in front of a different practitioner. And really learned that, especially when I had transitioned back into triathlon Alberta, and really understanding that it's okay to ask for help. You don't have to try to take on everything and think that you're an expert at everything. It gets very stressful when you have that mindset. So there's nothing wrong with being able to ask other practitioners to help you as part of your practice. And in the long run, that athlete and yourself is going to benefit greatly from being able to have the humility to ask. Lesson number 2, listen more than you talk. Nobody learned anything by hearing themselves speak. So this was a defining quote for me in 2019. Sometimes our passion, excitement, confidence, or frustrations can lead us to talk over or cut people off from having an opportunity to express their thoughts and perspectives with you. It leads to fewer ideas shared, less growth for everybody, and less perspectives for you as a practitioner to learn from. So, and don't void yourself of the opportunity to learn from others because you want to be the biggest person in the room. And it was our VP that actually pulled me aside this year and actually shared that as something that very well resonated with him after we had sat through several meetings together. And it's amazing when you start to sit back and you're in a group meeting or you're talking to others. It never hurts to sometimes just to sit back, let them finish off their sentences, let them finish off their thought. Be very cognizant of not trying to jump in too early, and you will start to see how much more that you can learn and obtain through new skill set, new knowledge that you never would have encountered in the past. Last but not least, lesson number 1. Self-control is strength. Calmness is mastery. And don't allow your emotions to overpower your intelligence. Aim to be the biggest constant in your athlete's world of chaos. We work in a very chaotic world, working in athletics, especially during these times. Be the positively contributing leader that they can count on at the best and the worst of times. We've all put years into our development. We put in the time, we put in the financial sacrifices to really try to enhance our skill sets and knowledge. But all it takes is 1 second of irrational or negative behavior, such as talking down or talking about someone in a very negative way. And that alone, that 1 second of irrational behavior can lose you the respect and the trust that you've worked so hard and so long to gain. I've seen that in almost every single program and multiple times in various programs, and remembering that and being very well aware of that and not allowing your emotions to overpower your intelligence is going to be key for growth and key for your ability to adapt to any environment that you find yourselves in. Last but not least, to wrap this up, I just wanted to take a moment to really, as of late, with the more practitioners that I talked to, I was fortunate enough to have been part of the NFL Dietitians Conference, and really seeing the growth in our industry as a whole, and even today seeing the number of participants in today's conference. I just want to take a moment to thank those of you out there, thank the pioneers in our sport that have provided myself, the opportunity to do what we get to do today. And I know in the past, just even 5-10 years ago, there wasn't as many of us in these really amazing roles that we get to be a part of. So thank you for paving the path so that we could do what we love to do today. Number two, I'm excited about what the future holds, even during these times. We're in a period where there's a lot of innovation happening. There's a lot of problem solving. We're all in this together. And as sport progresses, know that the next generation of general managers and coaches will be the athletes that we are actually now directing or influencing. So let's help each other out to enhance each of our capacity and ability to grow and impact them during these times. Let's support them more than ever, because if we can do that, the future is going to be extremely bright for the next generation of sport and athlete development that we get to be a part of. All right. That wraps it up. Thank you for your guys' time today. I really appreciate being able to chat with you guys. And if you guys have any questions and ever want to discuss any scenarios that you guys are operating through in sport, I'm not going to say I know the solution to everything, but I would love to collaborate and just even talk things through. Talk about different scenarios. There's so much that we can learn from each other, and especially now more than ever, we're so well connected. It's not hard to hop on a Zoom meeting, to hop on to get connected with others in other programs, and regardless of what level that they're working at, there's always something to be learned.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ricky. I appreciate it, buddy. You killed it, man. Great job. You know, for all of our attendees, you know, something to really walk away with, 5 lessons that you've learned. And so really appreciate that. Guys, we have a few minutes for questions. If you guys will type those in the Q&A box, I will be the moderator, and I'll ask Ricky as they start to come in. One thing, Ricky, I want to get right off the bat before guys start typing. You said life skills not learned in college are exposed in the NFL. Could you just give us an example of a couple of those life skills that are being exposed?
Yeah, so we have a couple players that are moving into Las Vegas as we speak, and this was a call that I had taken from one of our staff in personnel, and they were helping the athlete transition over to one of their new apartments with their family, and a flag was raised because they noticed that every single one of his meals was drive-through. Chick-fil-A 3 times a day, 5-6 days a week. And it was interesting because that made its way over to coach. And as we're working with this athlete, we quickly learned that he had come from a program where there was a lot of nutrition support that was provided. All the resources were provided to him, but because it was provided to him, the level of retention and the level of learning and hands-on skill set development was very, very limited. And so he knew the end product, something as easy as a smoothie, was something that he needed to do. But when we were on the phone, he fully admitted, you know what, I have no idea how to operate a blender. We were actually on the phone with him, talking him through as he was walking through Target. I have never shopped for fruit or for berries, something as simple as that. That was really eye-opening for us, and it really reinforced the way that we're trying to coach our guys here, and having them as really hands-on in everything that they do, and really understanding the purpose why we're having them do more here than a lot of other programs that they may have been a part of in the past. And so sometimes they look at that as, why are you taking away a service? Why aren't you here to provide me everything that I need? We are, but we're taking a very different approach and a very different angle in coaching, where when you leave this program, you're going to be very, very self-sufficient, and you're going to be very grateful that you took the opportunity to learn these skill sets that you can carry with you the rest of your life.
Awesome. Thank you. We got a question in from my guy, Joey Shear, down in Florida. So Joey is breaking into the strength and conditioning industry late in life. So he's in his his mid-30s, and he's just now going back to school. He's got an internship lined up this fall. He wants to know, what were your expectations going in as an intern, new to your industry?
Before going in as a intern and as a graduate assistant at Southern Miss, I was fortunate to have had that experience previously, working in the NHL and consulting with the CFL, and really given one, and it was actually one of the biggest and most rather challenging transitions, is because before I pulled the trigger on even applying, I had a lot of my friends and even my boss and some of the coaches that I was working with asked me why I would give up a full-time job to go in as an intern. And it wasn't until I actually talked to you, Zach, when we had some great conversations over the phone and hearing your passion and really hearing some of the gaps that I would have an opportunity to help fill, and knowing that wherever you go, sometimes taking a step back can really propel you 10 steps forward if you're willing to be open to the lessons that are in front of you. And there's always something to learn at every single stop. And just like the picture that I showed you guys with the railroad tracks, every single program that you go into, there's always going to be people around you. There's always going to be players around you. There's always going to be areas to learn from. And it's just a matter of you reaching out and being able to, I hate to say this, but it really is check your ego, because that's what I notice a lot of practitioners may have a challenging time doing. Be vulnerable, reach out. Even right now as we speak, in working with the various programs, various culinary programs, I'm learning so much from our culinary staff every single day in how to improve the flow of our systems, especially when players come back. How can we improve their experiences? Talk to those frontline cooks. They're going to give you so much insight on how to improve your program. And by the time the players come back, they're going to be a main point of contact for me, because I know I can't be in the weight room and in the meal room at the same time. But if you can build those relationships with those staff, they're going to be able to fill you in on and allow you to do your job that much better.
Awesome. All right, we have time for one more, Ricky, about 2 minutes here. So the question is, what are some of the tools / methods that you use to maintain your self-control and calmness in the high stakes environment that you operate in?
Learning to breathe and learning not to be very reactive. This was actually shared by me by one of our director of pro personnel here. And especially in our environment, you got a lot of personalities that are very sporadic. And sometimes learning to not try to react, and don't react to everything that they say, right? Sometimes it's just, if you can take a step back, slow the conversation down, and there's nothing wrong with you dictating the conversation by challenging them on the speed at which they're firing off things to you. And sometimes it never hurts if, let's say, if a coach is coming at me with things that I didn't see coming or I didn't expect, I'll take a second and I'll acknowledge them. And I'll tell them, I hear you. This is what I'm hearing from you. And really reinforcing to them that they're being heard. That also buys you a lot of time in starting to be able to piece together solutions that they're looking for that's going to be viable and that you can execute. Because the number of times in a day that I'll have a coach come up to me unexpectedly and make requests for a player that could come out of left field, it does happen quite a bit. And it's really making sure that you breathe. Don't try to work or respond when you're panicked, because when you respond when you're panicked, that's when sometimes you say things that you do regret. It just takes a lot of reps, and half the time it's just being aware of it and anticipating it. And if you're able to anticipate it, you're going to be able to respond much better to it.
Awesome. All right, Ricky. Well, again, man, I'm so appreciative of you taking time out of your busy schedule to speak at the Power Conference. I know all of our attendees are as well, and man, I can't wait till things calm down, and I'll come visit you in Las Vegas, see that beautiful new facility, and we'll be able to hang out soon, my man. I really appreciate you.
Got it. Yeah, looking forward to it. Thanks for having me, Zach.
All right, buddy. Have a good night.
Yeah, you too.
All right, guys. Now we're gonna go to a quick video of one of our sponsors, and then we'll continue on. So the video should be queuing up shortly, but we want to thank all of our sponsors and let you guys know the people behind us that really made this happen. So tune into this. All right. I don't know if everybody could hear that or not. I couldn't hear that. If you couldn't hear it, I apologize for the technical difficulties. We'll make sure we try to play that again tonight if you guys could not hear the volume. So I want to go ahead and keep things moving. Our second speaker of the night will be John Gordon, and I'm so fired up to have John to speak to us. John and I have been friends for a few years now. We were introduced through Erwin McManus, who used to be a pastor at Mosaic, where I went to church when I lived in Los Angeles. But John, you guys probably know him. He's a best-selling author. He has, talked all over the world, really, to Fortune 500 companies, professional teams, college teams, school districts, hospitals, and nonprofits. He's written he's written 20 books and 8 best-selling books. The most recent, The Garden. Every one of our speakers at Power Conference will be getting a copy of The Garden, and so fired up about that. But John, man, we're so thankful that you're here to speak to us. We know you have a busy schedule, but we're fired up to learn from you tonight. So I'll let you take it away.
Thanks, Zach. I appreciate it. Great to be with you.
All right. Thank you so much.
All right. I'm going to talk and then we'll do some Q&A. So we'll start with that. Hey, I'm going to talk about the number one predictor and factor of success. What do you think that is? Put in the chat right now what you think the number one predictor and factor of success is. I'd love to see your thoughts on that. Yes, I'm making you write something. Persistence, positive mindset, resiliency, relationships, humility, habits, not being afraid, passion. We're getting close, but we're not there. We're getting close. It begins with a G. Grit. I just saw it. Grit is the number one predictor and factor of success. It's not talent. It's not title. It's not wealth. It's not good looks. It's not gratitude. It's not consistency. It's grit. The ability to work hard for a long period of time towards a goal, to persevere, to overcome, to keep moving forward in the face of failure, rejection, adversity, and obstacles. We know that grit drives us, but I asked the question, what drives grit? Andrea Duckworth wrote the great book on grit. She has her recipe. She has her formula. We had some great conversations. But I've been thinking a lot about grit, and I put together my own formula, and I want to share with you what that formula is. And then I'd like you to think about what your formula is. And this is also a great thing to ask your athletes about what grit means to them. So hopefully you take some notes and you can take some of these ideas back to your teams. I've been doing this talk to a number of teams over this break, over this time of Zooming. Zooming so much we have Zoom but I've been doing this so much and people really are getting these concepts. So let's start with, first and foremost, grit is inspired by vision and purpose. It's inspired by vision and purpose. If you can see it, you can create it. If you have a vision, you also have the power to make it happen. And when you have a vision, you will keep on moving towards it. And so we have to have the telescope and the microscope. That's what drives us and keeps us going. And the telescope is the big picture vision of where we want to go. And that big picture vision keeps us moving forward. For me, my big picture vision was, years ago, I want to encourage and inspire millions of people, one person at a time. That was my vision. I wrote The Energy Bus. It was rejected by over 30 publishers. I was told to give up. But I couldn't give up because I had this vision and mission to do this work and to make a difference. So that just kept me going. It kept me gritty. I had this vision. And so I kept on pursuing it, kept on hoping, kept on dreaming. Finally, John Wiley & Sons agreed to publish the book. So I was so excited. The book was coming out. I asked a friend, what should I do? He said, pray. I prayed for it to be a bestseller. It came out. It was a bestseller in Korea. I learned you have to be specific with your prayers. It was like this huge hit in South Korea, but not North Korea, but this huge hit in South Korea, but not one bookstore in the United States would carry the book. So I decided to go on a 28-city tour, paid for it myself. Publisher wouldn't even pay for it. And I went from city to city sharing the message in the book. And I didn't have a lot of money, but you know what? I did it. My wife was supportive. And I went to one city, we had 5 people. I went to another city, we had 10 people. Another city, we had 30 people. The most people we had were 100 people in Des Moines, Iowa. They thought Jeff Gordon was coming. That's why they showed up. That's not a joke. That's a true story. I remember I got home. I didn't know what my future held. It wasn't a great tour, but I knew I had this vision. And I just had to live it and breathe it every single day. And it's easy to look back now, and I've written over 20 books and, you know, have had a lot of people read them and so forth. But I remember back then, like, it was so uncertain. I didn't know what the future held. The tour wasn't successful. And yet I said to myself, just live the vision and do that. And here we are 13 years later, and I get to be with you today. That was 2007, 2020. I get to share this message with you. I know that vision, that big picture vision, kept me going. But we also have to have the microscope. That microscope is the zoom focus action we need to take each day to realize the picture in the telescope. And so for me, that microscope has come up during this time, because I got this big picture vision, right? And maybe the goals have changed in a business, but my vision has remained the same. It hasn't changed. I'm just finding a different way of reaching people. I'm no longer on stages, but now I'm doing Zooms and I'm doing podcasts and so forth, finding different ways. So the vision has stayed the same. But each day I've had to really tap into what is the microscope, the zoom focus action each day in order to realize the big picture vision of what I want to do. Because it's been challenging. I mean, let's face it, when this first hit, I'm a writer and speaker, and 90% of my engagements were canceled. I have employees. I have a team I have to support. I have continued to support them. At first, it was really scary. What am I going to do? How are we going to do this? I had no idea. A lot of people were thinking the same way. And I got really negative at first. I want to admit that. I got pessimistic at first. I'm a pessimistic optimist. I actually go towards the pessimistic route first. And then I find this eternal ray of hope, this optimism that somehow, some way, it's going to work out. And I had to tap into that. Like I said, is this going to help you create your best life? Is this going to help you help others right now, John? You got to stay positive. And I came up with the mindset to zoom focus. It was win today. Like, I'm just going to win today. And if I win today and I win the next day and I win the day after that, if I win each day, I will win the future. And that came from Chad Wright, who I had on my podcast. And he told me about Navy SEALs and how a lot of guys trying out for Navy SEAL, to be a Navy SEAL during Hell Week, don't make it. And he said, the ones who don't make it, John, are the ones who are dreaming for it to end. They're longing for it to be over. The ones who make it are the ones who just say, make it to breakfast. Just want to make it to breakfast. Make it to midday. Make it to the evening. Make it to breakfast again. Win the moment. Win each day. And so that was my focus. Win today. Stay positive. Work hard. Make a difference. Really simple. So that was keeping me going the short run, having this big picture vision still of encouraging, inspiring as many people as possible, one person at a time. Always have to make time for that one person who needs help, who is facing a challenge. And so your grit is inspired by vision, and then you probably sense a purpose in there, because purpose is everything, right? We don't get burned out because of what we do. We get burned out because we forget why we do it. And so that purpose will drive you. Everyone has a mission statement today, but only the great teams and organizations have people who are on a mission. And so it's that mission, it's that purpose that will drive you forward. So grit is inspired by vision and purpose. It is fueled. Here's the next part of the formula. It's fueled by optimism and belief. We have to have this belief. We have to stay positive on this journey, and not Pollyanna positive. This is not about seeing the world through rose-colored glasses. This is knowing that you have the power to overcome the thorns. We stay positive through the setbacks and the obstacles. Duke University did a study on optimists, and they found that they worked harder, got paid more, and they were more likely to succeed in business and sports. And what they found was that because these optimists believed in a brighter and better future, they then took the actions necessary to create it. It became a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's so funny, though, the researchers use the term deluded, that they actually deluded themselves into believing it was possible. We might choose the term belief or faith, but because they believed or even deluded themselves, they would actually take the actions necessary to create it. It shows the power of the mind. You believe it, you create it. So what we believe during this time, what we believe during any adversity will determine ultimately what we create. And so it starts with that mindset of optimism and belief to keep moving forward and staying positive along the way. Stars shine the brightest in the darkness. And we know that positive people shine the most through adversity. And so we got to feed ourselves each day in order to feed others. That positivity will drive the grit, but we got to feed ourselves to stay positive so that way we can feed others and be positively contagious to the people around us. And if you don't have it, you can't share it. And so we got to feed ourselves so we have it to share with others. So how do we do that? Well, the best advice I ever heard is from Dr. James Gills, the only person on the planet to complete 6 double Ironman triathlons. That's a double Ironman, which means you do an Ironman, and then a day later you do another one. And the last time he did it, he was 59 years old. And he was asked how he did it, and he said this: I've learned to talk to myself instead of listen to myself. He said, if I listen to myself, I hear all the fear, all the negativity, and all the doubt, all the reasons why I can't finish this race. But if I talk to myself, I could feed myself with the words and the encouragement that I need to keep on moving forward. How many of us need to talk to ourselves more these days instead of listen to ourselves? We got to talk instead of listen, because those negative voices are always coming in. And Dr. James Gills, what he would do is recite and memorize scripture. And that's what fueled him, is memorizing it, reciting it. It gave him the encouragement he needed to keep on going. And we need that more than ever, because what we're facing right now are the 5 Ds. And these are the 5 Ds I wrote about in the new book, The Garden. And it is a spiritual fable, because this is a spiritual battle. And those Ds are doubt. They are distortion, lies, those negative thoughts that are always coming in. And I always ask athletes, college, professional, you name it, I say, hey, do your negative thoughts come from you? And a lot of times they're like, oh yeah, definitely it comes from me. Of course. I'm like, really? Who would ever choose to have a negative thought? Would you choose a negative thought? I wouldn't choose a negative thought. And then they think for a moment, no, I wouldn't choose one. Where's it coming from? When you dream and you're having a nightmare or a dream, are you choosing your thoughts during your dreams? No. So thoughts exist in consciousness, in a spiritual place. It's like the internet cloud. Brain is the hardware. The internet cloud is the software. And we're always downloading thoughts to our brain. No one has ever found a thought inside of your brain. That's where activation happens inside of the brain. And so what happens is those negative thoughts come in, But just because you have a negative thought doesn't mean you have to believe it. You don't want to give it power. Don't believe the lies that they tell. The lies that say the future is hopeless, season's hopeless. It's going to be the worst time ever. We're never going to get back to normal. This is like, we're done as a society. Like, this could be it. I mean, there's a lot of negativity out there right now. There's Team Apocalypse that are always spreading doom and gloom every single day. And we can choose that. We can listen to that. We can believe that. Or what we can do is speak truth to those lies. And that's what you have to do. That's what Dr. James Gills did. That's what Jesus did in the wilderness. Thousands of years ago, he actually gave us a blueprint on how to do it. He was brought into the wilderness by the devil, by the enemy, and he was tempted and lied to. And every time Jesus responded, "It is written, it is written, it is written." And so what he did was he spoke truth to the lies. He gave us the blueprint on how to handle the battle we're going through right now of negative thoughts, of doubt. And the third D, discouragement. You see, in the spiritual battle, the enemy knows that he can't beat you himself. So what does he do? He gets you to beat yourself. And so you get discouraged and you get down and then you give up. We don't give up because it's hard. We give up because we get discouraged. And that's why encouragement is so important. That's why the work that you do is so important. The word encourage means to put courage into. We need to put courage into ourselves. We need to put courage into others. We need to encourage, right? To overcome the discouragement that we face on a daily basis. And then we have this doubt going on, these negative thoughts coming in. We feel discouraged. And then what happens? Distractions. And that's the fourth thing. Distractions are the enemy of greatness. And distractions cause us to focus on the bad or sometimes the good, the bright, shiny objects, the things that seem appealing but actually harm us. And so we have to make sure that we are aware of the distractions that knock us off course. And when those 4 Ds hit, we wind up taking the bait of hate or focus on the distraction and making the bad choice. It leads to the 5th D, which is division. And we see a lot of division right now in this country. We see division within communities. We see division within ourselves. We see division within races. It's so sad what's going on. You can see how the enemy is playing all of us, right? With all these negative thoughts, with all of the hate. And you can see how it's affecting each person. It starts in the heart. It starts there. And so what we have to understand is the word anxious literally means divided. And we wonder why so many people are anxious right now. They feel divided from themselves. They feel divided from people they love. They feel divided from their community, from their teams. And they feel divided from the community and the country as a whole. We feel divided. So we feel more anxious. And so the answer to the distractions is to focus on what matters most. It's to love others. It's to be our best every day. It's to bring out the best in others. Tune out the distractions. Get rid of the clutter. What matters most? People, relationships, love, and then to overcome the division, it is unity. It is unite. It is to bring oneness back to ourselves. Unite to self, unite with each other, and then unite collectively, and then unite with God spiritually. And so the way we win that battle, and I'm just going to be honest, the way I won the battle is, for me, it's my faith journey through Jesus. I was 35 years old and I was losing the battle and I was quite negative. My wife almost left me a few years before that. And I almost wanted to give up many times, almost did. A lot of fear, a lot of doubt, a lot of discouragement, losing the battle. And Erwin McManus did a talk. I got a sermon from him. A friend gave me on CD. Didn't even know Erwin. Listened to this sermon and it spoke to me. It literally spoke to my soul. And for the first time, I started to question, who is this Jesus? And then several years later, I would give my life to Jesus. And from that moment on, I won the battle of my mind. You see, our minds don't need fixing. Our soul needs healing. And when we heal our soul, we unite back to ourself and to God, we then have a mind that actually works a whole lot better. Everything works better when we heal ourselves. And from there, I started to win the battle. I started to speak truth to the lies. I recognized the lies and I recognized what was happening. And I started to speak truth. I started to live that truth, started to walk in that power and truth. And I started to be so much more powerful as a result. Now, this doesn't mean, okay, like you have faith and then life is easy. No, your faith in God doesn't make life easier. It makes you stronger. And so for me, I found a greater strength to take on the battles, to take on the challenges, and that keeps you moving forward. So we stay positive on this journey, real positivity. We fuel up with optimism and belief. And that's how we win the battle to keep moving forward. And then from there, it is powered by faith and hope. We have hope for tomorrow. We have faith in a God who created us. We have faith that tomorrow's gonna be better than today. And what do fear and faith have in common? They both believe in a future that hasn't happened yet. Fear believes in a negative future. Faith believes in a positive future. And if neither has happened yet, why wouldn't we choose to believe in the positive future? Why wouldn't we choose to believe that our best days are ahead of us, not behind us? And so we move forward in faith one day at a time. And that keeps you moving forward. So faith is essential for grit. Optimism is essential. Hope is essential. I have hope, so I keep on going. I don't give up. And right now, we need to encourage and we need to give hope to so many people who need it. And we need to have hope ourselves. So don't lose hope. And then grit is driven by love. I love this part because love is the most powerful force in the universe, right? Love. Love is what casts out fear. So many of us who are dealing with fear, so many athletes that we deal with who have this fear that's holding them back from being their best, what we have to do is we have to help them focus on the love they have, and the love will cast out the fear and help them perform at a higher level. It's a spiritual battle. And so love casts out fear. I had a field goal kicker a few years ago and known him since college, and he was really struggling in the NFL. It was his second year. His rookie year was great, but his second year was on ESPN that he might get cut. And so we're talking on the phone. I said, hey, what's going on? He said, I'm just so full of fear. He said, I'm just thinking way too much. I said, tell me about your rookie season. He said, I was living my dream. I was in the NFL. I was just loving it. I said, tell me about this year. He goes, I missed a couple kicks in preseason. I don't want to let the coach down. I don't want to let the team down. I started thinking so much. I don't want to lose what I have. So now he was so full of fear. I reminded him that love casts out fear. And he started to focus on that love. Next thing you know, started kicking great again, still in the NFL to this day. It wasn't me. I just reminded him of the truth that he had forgotten, that love casts out fear. And if you love it, you won't fear it. And that happened to me. I was writing The Carpenter, and I was so full of fear writing it because Energy Bus was doing great. Training Camp was doing great. People were loving those books, making an impact. And I was so fearful that people were going to say that my best work was behind me and I was going to write a piece of junk. And I never had fear before like that. Never had writer's block. It was like gripping. It was definitely a spiritual attack. So I woke up one morning and God gave me this insight. All you got to do is love it, John. Just love the reader. Love the process of writing. Get back to that. If you love it, you won't fear it. It was so simple. That's what I did. I started writing. I wrote that book in 2.5 weeks, The Carpenter, after that. And that wove its way into the story. And I've been sharing it ever since because it's so powerful. Love it and you won't fear it. I also love talking about love because love keeps us going. Like if you love it, you won't quit. If you love your team, you won't quit on them. If you love what you do, you're going to keep on moving forward. So it is the ultimate driver of grit. Think about that. Love drives grit because it's this love that just keeps you going. It also causes you to be great. Pavarotti, the famous opera singer, was asked about his discipline, how he had such great discipline for what he does. And he said, everyone thinks it's discipline, but it's not discipline. He said, it's devotion. He was so devoted to his craft that it drove his discipline. And I think that's a great message for all the athletes that you all get to work with, because if you love it, discipline is actually gonna be a lot easier. If you don't love it, it's hard to be disciplined. You always feel like you're swimming upstream, climbing uphill, like always going against the current because it's just hard. But if you love it, you know the people who truly love it, they love working on their craft. And so discipline is actually really easy when you love it. So a lot of times what's happening with them is they're so full of fear. They're so full of stress that they have forgotten the love they have of the game. They have forgotten the love of competing. They're allowing the pressure. They're attaching their identity to their performance. And as a result of that, they've lost the joy of doing what they love. So we got to return them and get them back to love. And the same thing with you. You got to make sure that you are focusing on the love and not the competition, the love of the competition, but not the competition, the love of what you get to do, not the fear that we may lose our job if we don't perform well or anything like that. We just got to focus on love. Love it. Life is short. We can't live with fear. We live with love, and we focus on that. And so in doing so, that love drives us to be great and make a difference in the lives of others, making impact in others' lives. And that's where we truly find, greatness. You don't become great by focusing on yourself. You become great by making others better in the process. That's true greatness. And so love is what drives grit. Love drives greatness. It drives you to focus on your craft, and it drives the discipline that you have. Now, grit is also, I must add, it's created from the inside out. We got to remember that. Like, the power is on the inside, because people often talk about like developing grit. We got to develop grit. And what I always tell people is, you don't have to develop grit. Like, you already have grit inside of you. You already have it. You need to reveal it. You need to remember that you've always had it. Think about that. You've always had it. When you were a kid learning to walk, you had the grit to get knocked down, fall down, and then get back up, fall down again, and then get back up. And eventually you learn to walk. You already had the grit. What happens is, in the course of our life, we forget that we have it inside of us. We allow the circumstances, the events, the naysayers, the voices, and the negative thoughts that come to us from the enemy. We allow those to hold us back, to cause us to think that the circumstances are greater than who we are. But we remember who we truly are. We're children of God, that the power is inside of us, and that through a greater strength, we're able to overcome any circumstance. That when we move forward in that way, and we understand that power that is inside out, not outside in, that's when we truly become powerful. A great example of this is the carrot, the egg, and the coffee bean story that I wrote with a great guy named Damon West. And Damon West, you might have heard his story of being in jail for 7 years, was dealing meth and selling meth, winds up getting arrested, burglarizing homes to support his habit and to sell and so forth. And so as a result of that, he got sentenced to 65 years in prison. He was a North Texas football player, and afterwards just ruined his life. So now he's in jail. When he gets to jail, he meets a guy named Mr. Jackson, who teaches him about the carrot, the egg, and the coffee bean, teaches him the story about being a coffee bean. And Damon decides that he's going to make sure that he makes a difference in prison. He gets out after 7 years, and is now, as a result, has been speaking to a lot of different teams about his story and talking about being a coffee bean. And we wrote this great book called The Coffee Bean. And here's the analogy. You put a carrot into boiling hot water. What happens to the carrot? It gets softened. It gets weakened by its environment. You put an egg into boiling hot water. What happens to the egg? It gets hardened by its environment. And so when we deal with adversity and circumstances and challenges, we can be like the carrot that gets weakened by the situation. That was me years ago during the dot-com crash, when I lost my job and didn't know how I was going to pay the bills, and my life was crumbling, falling apart. My wife almost left me. She actually threatened to leave. Everything was falling apart. But it was during that moment that I discovered my faith, found my faith. And then after that, that would pave the way for the person I am today to be a light for others during a time such as this. But I was definitely the carrot. And so if you're the carrot, it's okay. We've all been there. Just know that you can overcome, you can change. You can be like the egg, where you get bitter and angry and you just don't care anymore. Like, you're just tired of all the stuff that you're dealing with administration, with the athletes who don't seem like they care, or just all the stuff that you have to deal with that really just gets you down. We can allow that stuff to make us hardened. We don't want to be like that either. Because once you stop caring, when you stop loving, you stop being your best. We want to be like the coffee bean. And when you take that coffee bean and put into boiling hot water, that coffee bean will transform the water into coffee. So it's not impacted by its environment. Instead, it impacts its environment. It transforms the environment that it's in. And you know that's what the Power Conference is all about. That's what strength coaches do. That's what you do in your field. You have the power on the inside to transform that environment, that culture, the people in your building, and make an impact on them. And through your influence, through your impact, you transform everyone around you. Think about the power of that. Going back to my faith, think about Jesus. 12 people, and he turned the world upside down through the power of those 12 people, the relationships he had. One was an energy vampire named Judas. The rest were great, but one was an energy vampire. And those guys, even those other guys didn't believe, they didn't really have a great vision. They were not very competent, right? And yet he spoke into them. He believed in them. He developed a relationship with them. And he would transform the world from the inside out. So always remember, the power is inside you. And a great current day story to share that example. I'm at the Oklahoma City Thunder, and I'm walking across the court, and there's Mo Cheeks and Russell Westbrook, and I was about to speak to the team. And as I'm walking by, Mo said, "Hey, John, what do you think it has a bigger impact on a team? Home field advantage in baseball or home court advantage in basketball? What has a bigger impact on the opposing team?" So I thought for a moment, and I knew right away, neither. When you know the world is just outside noise, when you know the stadium or the court is just noise, and you know that you don't create from the outside in, you create through your work ethic and your passion and your purpose and your joy and your love and your work ethic. When you create from the inside, you will experience success on the outside. So we create inside out. I said, neither. And Russell said, that's what I think. He said, most of the guys in the league believe in home court advantage, so it affects them. He said, I know it isn't true, so I just go do what I do and play my game. Best advice I ever heard. Think about that. Most of the guys believe in the lie that outside noise or that home court could affect them. They believe that there's an advantage to another team. In life, we believe the lie that things outside of us can impact how we feel. We believe that someone's tweet could impact how we feel. No, the power's on the inside, not the outside. We create inside out. And when you know that and just do what you do and you win today and you stay positive today, you will then create success on the outside. We create inside out. The power's on the inside. So that's where the power of grit comes from. A couple other parts of grit, and then I just want to take some questions. But grit is also, it's revived by resilience. Got to be resilient. You just don't give up. That was my strength. I played lacrosse at Cornell University. I was a face-off guy, defensive midi. I wanted to play offense, but they wouldn't let me. They didn't think I was good enough on offense, even though in high school I was. So they made me a D midi. I accepted my role, and I just was resilient. I was just gritty. I was just tough. I wasn't the best. I wasn't the most talented, but that's how I became a 3-year starter, just by deploying that grit. And I took those same lessons when I wrote a book and got rejected over and over again. Everything I learned playing sports would prepare me to do the work I do now. That's just the way it is. That's what's so great about sports, right? And so we got this resilience. It's kept alive by stubbornness. We got to keep it alive, right? We don't give up. Like, we just keep it alive because we are stubborn. So there is an element to that. It includes some fear of failure. I think we would admit that. Not the kind of failure that paralyzes us. We don't want that kind of failure. But there is a little element of a fear of failure that keeps the edge, that keeps us edgy, that keeps us going, that makes us prepare a little more. Like, we got to prepare and get ready. It's that feeling that maybe I don't have it today. Like, maybe is today the day I don't have it. And so we prepare a little more. We get ready. We get that adrenaline going. So there's a little fear of failure in all of this, which is great. And you know the great ones. We all know the great ones. They all have this little, fear of failure in them. And they also have this, and this is the final part, a desire to prove oneself. I truly believe that's an element to grit. There's this desire to keep showing that I got it, that I can do it. You look at Tom Brady, he still wants to prove himself. You look at Drew Brees, he still wants to prove himself. You look at the greats, they all want to prove themselves. And so there's an element to that in grit as well. So how about you? What's your formula for grit? Will you use some of these ideas to incorporate into your formula? anything I miss, feel free to add to it. Let's take some questions. Let's talk. The genius is always in the audience. It's one thing I know. It's never on stage. Technically, I'm not on stage, but I'm the speaker. And I always believe that the genius is in the audience. So I always think we learn so much from each other. And I'm a student first, teacher second. So I learn from everyone I get to work with, and then I get to share what I've learned along the way. And then as I go along, I always learn new concepts, new ideas, always evolving, always growing. Never thought I would write a book like The Garden. Never thought I'd write a faith-based book. It is faith-based, my first one, but I had to write it. I felt called to write it, and it was a new venture for me to do something like that. But it was something that I felt like I had to share because I see so many deal with fear and stress and anxiety. And I knew I need to share what the solution is because I know what the solution is. And people need the solution now more than ever. So how do we overcome those 5 Ds? And we overcome it with trust, with speaking truth to the lies, the distortions, encouraging instead of discourage, and then focus on what matters most instead of distractions, and then uniting instead of dividing. And it's so simple, and yet we're not doing it. So if we can do it, we'll have a huge impact. All right, let's take some questions. And Zach, when they ask questions, can we actually see their video? Can they open up their video and they can actually ask it instead of you just reading it? Is that possible or no?
Sure. Do you see the Q&A box?
I do, but if you want to read it, or if they want to come right on the screen and ask, I've done a lot of Q&A like this, and it's pretty cool when they can ask the question video-wise. I can see them.
Okay, yeah. So they're not going to have the opportunity to pop up video-wise.
Okay.
But you might can see their questions popping up. So I don't know if you see, there's one right there. Mr. Gordon, your message was incredible. It really spoke to me personally. Question, if you could just pray for me. I have fear of failure, and I've got a long road ahead of me as I enter the strength and conditioning industry in my mid-30s. I appreciate it very much.
Yeah, I think that's great. Mid-30s. Yeah, I was 30 something when I started doing this. Found my calling literally at 32, 33. Didn't really get going until I was like 35. So same thing. I found my calling later. I'm now 49 years old, but I'm getting to do what I love every day. And it doesn't matter when you start. It just matters what you do when you start. And I think that's the key, and what you create along the way.
Perfect.
Yeah, if anyone wants to put a Q&A in, just put in the Q&A box and we can take questions there. Feel free to ask anything. You can ask me anything you want. Like, nothing's off limits. You ask me anything.
All right, we've got one. When you found your calling later in life, did you go through a transition period of doubt?
Of course. Oh, I went through a ton of doubt, especially when I was getting all those rejections. And even when I started speaking initially, I felt a lot of doubt because I wasn't very good. And my wife says often, like, she gives me a lot of credit because I was really bad and still doing it. And so she was supportive of me doing it, but she was like, man, you were doing it and like, you weren't great, but you just went out and did it. And that's the thing. So I had a lot of doubt. I had people who came to see me speak, friends of friends who were in the industry, and they literally told my friend, like, oh, he's not going to make it. Like, he should just find something else to do. And so I definitely had doubt along the way. That's for sure.
All right, got another one. What if being a perfectionist gets in the way and doesn't lead to taking risk and continuing to show grit in your goal? How do you show the same determination you showed when starting your first book? Did you ever face that?
You got to ask why you're a perfectionist in the first place. And that's the thing. Like, why are you a perfectionist? You're a perfectionist because you don't really trust God. And because you don't trust God, you try to be perfect like God. You have to recognize that you're not perfect, trust God, and allow yourself to be imperfect and just go for it. And that's the key. So there's a fear holding you back. You feel like if you don't perform well, that's who you are. You're tying your performance to your identity. And you have to understand that your identity is so much greater than your performance. Your performance is not who you are. In the garden, I talk about how we get attacked in the place of our identity. Adam and Eve were in the garden, and the serpent said to Eve, did God really say you couldn't eat from all the trees in the garden? Did he say you couldn't eat from all the trees? No, God said you couldn't eat from the one tree. And so he was creating doubt in their mind that God can't be trusted. So they had the doubt, and then he came with this. If you eat from this tree, you will be like God. And Erwin McManus taught me this. He deserves the credit. He said, it's funny. Everyone thinks they ate the apple because they want to be like God. No, they already were. Because in Genesis, it already said they were made in the likeness and image of God. And so think about that. They were made in the likeness and image of God, and the enemy convinced them that they weren't. So they believed the lie that they were less than, when really they were made for so much more. And that happens to us every day. We believe the lie that we're not enough, when God has created us for so much more. So in our trust and putting our identity in him, we now have the strength of his strength and the desire to move forward, knowing that it's okay if we're not perfect. And that's a lot of power in actually doing that. So for me, when I'm writing a book, I really don't have any concern. I just write what I'm supposed to write. Only that one time with The Carpenter, I just put it out there. If people don't like it, they don't like it. You know, I know some of my talk's going to be better than others. Sometimes I'm more fluid. Sometimes I'm smoother, right? Sometimes I'm better. That's just the way it is. Sometimes we perform better. And so you have to understand it's okay to not be okay. And we're not going to be perfect. You have to be willing to fail in order to ultimately be great and succeed. And we look at the best performers, they're okay with failing and they go for it. And more often than not, as a result of that, they succeed. Not a lot, they're not every time, but they're okay if they fail. And that drives them to actually have more success.
Awesome. All right, John, Tanner, who coaches in Hawaii, wants to know, if you only had 5 minutes to make an impact on somebody, what would the focus be?
I'd sure have the 5 Ds, you know, wreak havoc on you and hold you back. And then I would give you the antidote to those 5 Ds. And I would talk to you about talking to yourself instead of listen to yourself. I would give you some elements of what we talked about today. It would be those very things.
Awesome. All right, Coach Blevins, who coaches with the New York Giants, wants to know, what made you write your first book? What motivated you to write the books after? And what roadblocks did you come across?
Well, what made me write the first book was The Energy Bus. And I knew I wanted to write a fable, a story. I knew I wanted to make a difference. And one day I was walking, and actually I thought about giving up. I thought about giving up on this walk, and literally because my life was not going well. I had sold my restaurants with the goal of, I went into the restaurant business when I lost my job during the dot-com crash. Second mortgage our home, $20,000 in credit cards. I mean, I just went for it, put it all on the line. Somehow, some way, God carried us. We were able to make a profit, eventually made the restaurant successful. They were Moe's Southwest Grill franchises, sold them in 2005. And now it's 2006 and money's running out because we made some decent money, but now it's running out. And I know I want to write and speak. I told my wife, this is what I truly want to do. I want to put everything into it. She said, what happens if it doesn't work? I said, there are no other options. And so there is no plan B. And then what happened was, on this walk, when I'm thinking about what am I going to do? Would I get a job? The Energy Bus came to me, literally came to me. And I went and started writing it. And I wrote it in like 3.5 weeks. So I was inspired to write this story about a guy who was miserable and negative. His team at work is in disarray, problems at home. And he wakes up Monday morning to a flat tire. Gets on a bus, takes the bus to work. There was no Uber at the time. And he meets Joy, the bus driver. She calls him Sugar. And she and a cast of characters teach him the 10 rules for the ride of his life. And it's all about overcoming the negativity, dealing with energy vampires on his team. And he has to get his team on the bus and moving in the right direction with a shared vision, focus, and purpose. And it's why so many different teams and sports teams have actually used that book as part of their culture building process. And so after that, what happened was Mike Smith brought me to speak to the Falcons after Jack Del Rio used the Energy Bus in 2007 when it came out. Got a call from Jack out of the blue. Then Mike Smith brought me to the Falcons, and I started working with them for about 8 years. And every time I would go speak to a team or a company, because companies started bringing me in after reading the Energy Bus, and school districts, I would actually get new ideas. And so that led to the no complaining rule and SOUP. And then I wrote Training Camp, about what the best do better than everyone else, which was inspired by watching the Falcons training camp that year. So each new book has been the evolution of new ideas and new things I know I'm meant to write. And I don't write something if I'm not meant to write it. Like, I will only write what I am meant to write. And I get a hit of what I'm meant to write. I know, like, that's the next thing. Next book comes out. My wife and I wrote it already. It's supposed to come out this month, but we had to wait because of everything going on. But it's going to come out at the end of August, and it's called Relationship Grit. And it's about sticking together through the challenges and the ups and downs. And it's our tell-all book on the mistakes that I made. She didn't make any mistakes, but the mistakes I made that almost destroyed our marriage, and how I was not, again, a person of faith. I almost ruined our marriage. I was not a positive person, not a great husband, not a great father, and how I turned everything around after my faith journey. You know, I really turned everything around. Now we've been married 23 years, and it's really our story and what we've learned through all the ups and downs. And it's a very fresh, honest take. And it would go back and forth between her writing and my writing. So we go back and forth through the story.
Awesome. All right. We have Sarana. She wants to know, how do you balance a sense of urgency and faith with God's timing?
Yeah, and that's why I think that's the age-old question, right? It's the hardest thing, right? Act like it depends on you, pray like it depends on God. And it's hard. I mean, it's hard to know, like, what do I do next? How hard do I push? How hard do I work for this if it's the wrong thing? And what I've learned over the years is the more I walk and the more I pray, like I walk and pray each morning, the more I do that, the more God starts to give me insights of what I'm supposed to do. And sometimes I get a vision, but just because you get a vision doesn't mean you're supposed to do it right now. Sometimes it's a vision with a not yet. And I think it's just in that walk and that patience to really know, what am I supposed to do next? And sometimes I'll say, God, make it so simple for me that because I'm not very smart. So make it really simple to let me know what I'm supposed to do next. And a lot of times, more often than not, God will show me what I'm supposed to do next. So I think the urgency is, yeah, you work hard, but make sure you're working on the right thing. And if it has to be aligned with your vision and purpose, like, what is your vision? What is your purpose? And that will tell you that you're moving in the right direction in doing what you're supposed to do. Like, what are you really here for? What do you want to truly focus on? And make sure it's aligned to that. And you got to get clear on that. And it doesn't happen always right away, you know, but I think that's where you have to pray. You have to listen. You have to be obedient. And my thing was always like, God, show me the signs. Like, I'm open, God, show me the signs of what I'm supposed to do, where I'm supposed to go, and who I'm supposed to be. Show me the signs. And even now, to this day, I'll say, God, show me what's next. Use me for your purpose. Use me for your purpose. Like, what do you want me to do? Because again, I write this faith-based book, The Garden. All my other books have been business. It could literally, you know, hurt my business in a lot of ways if people start to, you know, feel uncomfortable bringing me in and so forth. But I knew I had to take a stand and write this book. So I did. And funny thing is, it's going to hit the Wall Street Journal list at number one. It's a faith-based book, but it's in the Wall Street Journal bestseller list this week at number one. So God's got a great sense of humor.
That's awesome. All right. Trevor has a question. How do the best overcome a terrible performance and then come back to give one of their best? Does their confidence go down or not?
Well, it shouldn't go down. The best do it. And the way they overcome is by having a short memory. They know that performance does not define them. And so they basically let it go. And Deshaun Watson, for example, I've known Deshaun since Clemson, worked with Clemson for the last 8 years. And Deshaun just has such a short memory. Like, after the next play, he's done, moving on. And so you got to remember, like, the state of mind is what created that moment. Your state of mind created that moment you were in that moment. The next moment is a new opportunity to have a different state of mind. And so whatever happened in that moment was the result of the state of mind you were in that moment. So why would you want to go back to a thing that already happened? It's already in the past. Have a new state of mind or a positive state of mind for the next moment. And what I have found, what I truly believe is that confidence comes from clarity. The more clarity we have, the more confidence we have. When we are cluttered and a lot of thoughts in our head and a lot of fear and doubt and negativity, what happens is we get cluttered and then we don't perform as well. And what you'll find a lot of times is with athletes is they actually will be thinking a lot, but then they get into the performance and they start playing, and very quickly all those thoughts fade away. And now they're in the zone in the moment, and all of a sudden they have clarity, and then they have this like increased confidence. And so it's not something you can like manufacture. I truly believe it comes from whether we are clear or whether we are cluttered in our mind. And so the goal is to have more clarity, and clarity comes from connection. So I truly believe the more connected we are, you can meditate and be connected. You can pray and be connected. You can be in the zone and be connected, but the more connected we are, the more clarity we have, the more confidence we have.
Awesome. All right. We got a question here. How do you maintain your positivity if you work for someone who leans towards negativity, like your boss?
Yeah, that's hard. I always get that question. You have to be more positive than the negativity that you face. And Gandhi said, I will not let anyone walk through my mind with their dirty feet. And so every day you go in and you're not going to let anyone walk through your mind with their dirty feet. My dad was a New York City cop, you know, undercover narcotics. And so he was shot a few times. He was battling the drug cartels in the streets of New York City. And, you know, he was definitely a tough guy. And I lived with a guy who was very negative. You'd get up in the morning, he'd say, you know, what's so good about it? You'd say, good morning, Dad. What's so good about it? My dad was Al Bundy before Al Bundy was Al Bundy. Some of you have no idea Al Bundy is, right? But I know that because I had to deal with this negative person a lot, it actually helped me become more positive. And so I was not going to allow my dad, as I got older, and I wasn't going to allow his negativity to affect me. I was going to be more positive. Told him I want to be a writer and speaker. He said, what the heck do you want to do that for? That's a load of junk. That won't amount to anything. You know, my dad had the gift of discouragement. And so, you know, you learn how to deal with that, and you don't allow those people to affect you, right? Don't allow the naysayers to keep you down. You don't let praise go to your head, and you don't let critics in your head. So no energy vampires allowed.
Awesome. I have a question. So this is for me, John. You talked about, you know, your purpose earlier in your talk, just about impacting so many people. As you move forward through life, I guess, how do you know, like, hey, yeah, I'm doing this. Obviously, you've got, you know, best-selling books, but I guess what is your continued goal? You know, is it to keep writing books and to keep making the impact through writing? And just talk about that if you would.
Yeah, I don't really have like a 5-year plan or anything like that. It's really just keep doing what I'm supposed to be doing. Keep making a difference, keep speaking, doing these Zooms. Been doing our Zooms with all the different teams and so forth and companies. Just did a virtual keynote yesterday. So keep doing this, keep hopefully making a difference, keep writing what I'm supposed to write, and then see where the next thing goes. Like I never thought I would have read a book on relationship grit. My goal was to do a movie though on Training Camp. I'd love to make that into a movie one day. So that is a goal, but it's one of those things where going back to the question on urgency and trust, like I've worked at it, had a few scripts written, hasn't been great, hasn't really worked. And I just go, all right, well, it's not meant to happen right now. So I just trust. So I keep working at it a little bit and keep trusting. And I really believe at the right time, it will happen.
Yeah, that's a lot like me. A lot of people ask me that question. That's why I asked you. And I say, you know, very similar. I'm like, you know, I don't really have a 5-year, 10-year. I'm going to try to be the best that I can today. And I'm going to follow God's plan for my life. And I would have never
thought I'd been doing what I'm doing, you know, 10 years ago, even 5 years ago, that I'd be doing what I'm doing now. And so you just never know. I think you win today and you make a difference today and you use your gifts and your talents. Like you serve where you are. And when you serve where you are and you make a difference where you are, what happens is then you grow into the leader that you're meant to be. And when you serve in small ways, you get more opportunities to serve in bigger ways. So I think the opportunity is just to try to serve where you are. Years ago, I did an event for like a country club kind of place, a resort in the Pocono Mountains that a friend of mine from college, his family owned. And it was supposed to be like 100 people and 6 showed up. And I remember thinking like, you know, come on, 6 people. But my mission was one person at a time. So I was like, all right, John, you said that. Now you have to live it one person at a time. Well, out of those 6 people, a woman was there named Betty Palms. Years later, she became the president of Avon and then brought me into Avon to speak to 6,000. She remembered that day of those 6 people. So 6 turned into 6,000. And I think that's always been my philosophy. It's from the Carpenter. You love, you serve, and you care. You love, you serve, and you care. And you do those 3 things, you will stand out in a world where so many don't seem to care. You want to be a great strength coach. You want to be a great coach in general. Love, serve, and care. And we have to overcome challenges along the way. It's not going to be easy, right? We're not positive because life is easy. We're positive because life is hard. And we know that pessimists do not change the world. I think that's pretty clear. And so if you want to change the world, you want to make an impact, you got to be an optimist.
That's great. All right, next question. And you do a great job of this in your books and tonight. So the question is, how do we as coaches cross the bridge into utilizing God's word into our coaching and teaching while employed either by academic or private institutions when it could be frowned upon?
Yeah, you have to always be careful with that as a coach. And so I don't want to give you any bad advice on that end. I think you could share with them the biblical principles without necessarily sharing where it's from. Most of my books have been just that. And I've been able to make a huge impact by doing that. But you can always talk about your own journey, your own journey of where you've been and how you got there. And that's okay. That's freedom of expression and freedom of, that is what we are protected from, to be able to talk about you without making someone else necessarily feel like they have to join you in that. So I think it's always about sharing your own story, but you can always teach from the biblical principles to make an impact. And then again, when God moves you and you feel compelled to, then listen to that voice. Going back to what's urgent and what we need to be patient on, like if you're constantly getting this compulsion to do it, this nudge to do it, then we know we need to move forward. Like sometimes you get the nudge to make that call and you make that call and it leads to something else. You have the nudge to go talk to that person that's at the event. The person sitting next to you in the plane when you don't usually talk to people on a plane, but you talk to that person and it leads to something else. Is that nudge of God pushing you saying, this is part of your destiny. This is part of what you're meant to do. And you just got to be open to that.
Awesome. All right. It's a great question here. What would be your message to student athletes, particularly seniors who face all the uncertainties with the upcoming season due to COVID?
Yeah, this is a great learning opportunity that we're going to go through. We have to learn, we have to grow, we have to adapt. And no matter what happens, this is teaching us all so much. I mean, it's teaching a lot of us, teaching me a lot, right? So everyone is learning and growing during this time. So whatever you go through now, it will prepare you for your future, whether it's a good thing that you get to do or a bad thing where the season ends and you don't even get to have a season. Whatever it may be, we have to learn from it and grow from it. So this is an opportunity to grow yourself and to be a leader for others. And maybe you don't get to be on the field. How are you going to lead others? If you are on the field, how will you lead others? How will you lead others through this challenging situation? I did a Zoom with a college football team. And while we were doing it, I actually did the grit talk and we talked about it's okay to not be okay. And one of the players said that he was not okay. Like he was really struggling, having a lot of anxiety and having a lot of discouragement. And after that, a lot of the team rallied around that guy. And we talked about how we were going to just start encouraging each other, sending texts and reaching out more. Doing that is going to make that team a lot stronger. So every challenge is an opportunity to learn and grow. So what I would tell that senior is, look, everything you learn today is going to prepare you for the rest of your life. And that's the most important thing. Whatever you go through, it's preparation. Sports is one thing, but as we know and we've seen, life is so much more.
That's great. This is
great questions, by the way. I mean, really appreciate you asking all these. Thanks so much, everyone.
This is a good branch off that question. This will be great for me to know as well. How do we maintain the trust of our athletes so that they don't think they're simply being used to make money rather than thinking about their health this season?
Wow, great question. I always believe that people can tell your true intention. So when your intention is about their health and it's about their safety and their health and helping them get through, whatever challenge they're facing, and particularly this right now, they'll know your heart. And every feeling we have in our heart, the research shows it goes to every cell in the body and then outward up to 5 to 10 feet away. We can sense someone's feelings transmitted by their heart via electromagnetic signals. And the heart is actually 5,000 times stronger than the brain. And so people can tell your heart, they know your heart. So to me, you're just intentional, you're real, you care about them. They're going to really demonstrate it. They're going to feel your care. And I think that's most important. And you just tell them, look, I'm here because I care about you. That's most important. Everything else is secondary. And then you'll be able to prove that and you'll be able to show that. I've done that with a few clients, right? A few clients reached out and, hey, John, we're thinking about you doing some speaking, blah, blah, blah. I said, well, what are you going to charge for something like that? I said, you know what? You've been great clients. Just pay me whatever you want. Like literally pay me whatever you want. Like whatever. And literally like they would just decide what they wanted to do. And that was letting them know that I care and I'm here for them during this time. And it was a very real thing. And so I think it's important to like do things like that. Be real, show you care.
It's great advice. Yeah, I think that's exactly right. People,
If anyone else has any other advice, Zach, if you do too, I'm open on that. You know, if you.
Yeah, I think you hit it on the head. I mean, these especially these college athletes, they're so in tune. They know who's real and who's not, and they know if you truly care about them or not based off of your day in, day out interaction with them.
Yeah, you know, if you look at what's going on right now with, you know, with the racial tension that has happened, and you know, again, that has been a good thing in so many ways because it's an awakening, and it's tough to go through it. It's uncomfortable, but it also leads to growth. So the question is like, do you want growth or great growth? And growth, we could show up and just, you know, be surface level every day and work on a routine and encourage each other. And we're going to have some growth if we do that. But for great growth, we got to be uncomfortable. So we go through the encouragement, we have our routine, we have our relationships, but we got to be a little uncomfortable and go through discomfort in order to have great growth. So we're going through a little discomfort now, but ultimately it's going to lead to great growth if we're willing to use it in the right way. And what this time has revealed is which teams are strong, like who has strong relationships, which coaching staffs have strong relationships with their student athletes. And if you haven't had strong relationships, it's going to be revealed. So it's really important in showing who is taking the time to invest in their players, who care about them and have a relationship with them. And that's a sign, again, that maybe you have to improve in that area or you're doing really well in that area. We can all get better, but I think it shows, again, what kind of connection we have. Always remember, connection leads to commitment. I wrote this in The Power of a Positive Team, which, you know, a lot of teams have read it. Really, these are what makes great teams great. If you want to be a committed team, you have to be a connected team. The more connected you are, where you earn bonds of trust, where you have emotional and psychological safety, where there's a freedom to be yourself. You're not worried about ridicule. And you truly have this connection that will lead to a greater commitment. You'll never have commitment without connection. It's the connection that breeds the commitment.
Awesome. All right, we have time for one more. We'll take this one from Kurt. He said he's read several of your books, and what's the best way to share the stories that you have in your books with a group? He wants to share these stories with either his players or his group, and what's the best way to go about that?
I think I've had coaches where they've read the stories together. Like I had one coach at the college level that would literally read a couple pages a day or a chapter a day with the team, and they'd read together. You could do that. I mean, there's just a lot of ways to do it. You can share the book with your team, and you can have them all read together. I have found when a team reads, like Jack Del Rio, 2007, first time it ever happened. I had never worked with a team before, even high school. You know, I've never spoken to a team in high school, college. Jack Del Rio was the first team in 2007. He decided to buy the energy bus for everyone, even the custodial staff and the kitchen staff. He wanted everyone to have it, to get on the bus together. They all read it. And when I came and spoke, they already had read it and they were already on the bus, and they were all thinking the same positive way. That was the year they go to the playoffs, beat the Steelers, and almost beat the Patriots in that round. Again, I'm not going to take credit, but I saw the power of everyone thinking positively the same way. So I would recommend, you know, again, just you don't have to buy a lot of books. What you do is you buy a couple, you read it, you sign your name in it, and you have each player sign their name in it. Then it goes to the next group of players. They read it, they put their name in it, and you can see everyone who's read that book. And you keep that on hand, and then when you have a new team the following year, you can pass it around that way. So I'm not trying to sell a lot of books. That's just something you can do.
That's great. Yeah, Kurt, to answer your question, you know, and I told John this, I'm going to go through the garden with a player who I know is struggling with some stuff, and we're going to read a chapter or two a day in my office. I'm going to have him a book and me a book, and we're going to talk about it. It's literally going to be 7 to 10 minutes a day or every other day, and most of John's books, you know, are very easily read, and it's a great way to connect with your athletes and share these stories. So it's great. All right, John. Well, I cannot thank you enough for taking time out of your evening. And I know all of our coaches here, just thank you so much. Stuff's poured in about how much they've appreciated you and your insight, but truly, truly thankful like I've always told you, I've read every book, and I'm a huge fan. And so it's a blessing, and I'm humbled that you would choose to come and speak at the Power Conference. Thank you.
I'm honored that you would have me. I was supposed to speak live years ago. My dad died, if you remember. My
Nope.
dad passed away when I was supposed to come speak live. We couldn't do it. You were gracious. You understood, of course, which was great. And so I'm honored to be here. And you have to tell people we came up with this conference title together, the Power Conference. We actually came up with the name together when we were brainstorming back and forth. So so the next time it's in person, I definitely want to be there. And just want to ask everyone, hey, please pray for me because I'm like really burning up right now, and my son has COVID, so he tested positive. So I'm going, I hope I don't have it. So pray for me right now. Like as I was speaking, I'm like, man, I'm really getting hot right now, but I'm hoping it's just the heat in here.
Sure, for sure. Well,
Hey, if anyone wants to reach out to me, by the way, you could text me. I'll give you my cell. Please don't give my number to anyone else. This is just for you. If you have a question or challenge, you can always reach out. 904-514-2722. 904-514-2722. And that's my cell number. If you ever have a challenge or you ever need encouragement, I'm happy to be there. My good friend's daughter just literally took a bunch of pills and is an athlete and literally just tried to commit suicide. And it's pretty scary when you hear things like that. But so many people right now are dealing with so much anxiety and not being able to play sports. It's affecting people in a big way. She's an athlete. And so just want you to know, if you're ever facing a challenge, reach out to me, or you have someone who is facing a challenge. That's my mission, one person at a time. So I'm happy to help.
awesome. Thanks so much, John. Have a great
thank
night. Be praying.
Thanks, Zach. Appreciate you. Take care. I'll be fine.
All right. All right, guys. So we're gonna go to a break. We're gonna see a couple of our videos from our sponsors, and then we'll be back for our third speaker of the night. All right. So let's check these out. All right. So I'm aware the sound did not work again, but hey, just like John taught us, we will stay persistent and we will keep fighting to get this sound on for our great sponsors. Zoom has given us an error message with that, so we'll keep fighting. But at this time, I want to introduce to you guys a man named Goody Goodlow. Goody will be speaking next week as one of our keynote speakers, but he's going to make an introduction tonight. Goody's been on the ground floor of Power Conference from the start. Goody is one of my best friends. He's been a mentor to me over the years. But Goody is going to introduce our third speaker of the night. So Goody, take it away, my man.
Well, thanks a lot. And thanks so much, Coach Zach Woodfin. Shout out to Coach Anthony Lamondo as well. Appreciate you guys and your vision and your heart for Power Conference. And I think year 5, is that correct? Year 5. And so it's been just a tremendous impact for so many people around the country. And I know I personally have been impacted, just even tonight's speaker, Ricky, Sharon, of course, John as well. And so we're going to keep the party going. I am honored to introduce our next speaker. Michelle Carter Elder reached her life goal in 2016 by winning in 2016 the gold medal in the Rio Olympic Games. Beginning her throwing career in 1997 while in junior high school, Michelle is a 3-time Olympian as well as a world champion gold medalist. She has excelled at the national and international levels for plus 15 years. While still in high school, Michelle captured the 8 Texas State UIL titles in shot put and discus as well. Michelle became the first female, by the way, in the United States as an athlete to win the event of shot put since its inception or the competition in 1948. So she is the first. How about them apples? On a personal note, Michelle, I mentioned, is married, recently married in the last couple of years. She's born and raised in Tejas, the Lone Star State. She is the eldest child of Michael and Sandra Carter. Her father won, listen to this, Michelle's father, Michael, her father won the men's shot put silver medal while representing Team USA at the 1984 Olympic Games, my hometown. I remember those games. And also, he played professional football for the San Francisco 49ers. Listen to this, from 1984 to 1992, winning not 1, not 2, but 3 Super Bowl championships, and is also a 3-time Pro Bowl selection. Michelle received a full track scholarship to the University of Texas, where she graduated in 2007 with a BA degree in Youth and Community Studies and a minor in kinesiology. Michelle Carter has spoken to diverse groups on positive body image, goal setting, self-confidence. She has appeared on shows and events as recently as the Metropolitan Museum of the Arts, Creative Convening in New York City, as well as on the Rachel Ray Show. And she's known as the Shot Diva, or Michelle the Diva, Shot Diva, which explains her love of being a certified professional makeup artist with an interest in beauty and fashion. And now, lastly, I have known Michelle for 20 plus years. She actually was a youth in our youth ministry back in Dallas, Texas, at a church called Oak Cliff Bible Fellowship. Shout out to her pastor, Tony Evans, who was my pastor. I served there for about 5 years. And one of the greatest things I got a chance to do was be a shepherd and encouragement to her. She's not only an Olympic gold medal winner, she's a sister, she's a daughter, she's a wife, she's a champion for great causes, large and small. She is golden, not just on the track and field, but in life. Ladies and gentlemen, come on, let the left hand meet the right hand. Put it together for Michelle Carter.
Thank you, Goody. I knew you was going to hit all the points. Thank you for that introduction. Hello, everyone. My name is Michelle Carter, and thank you all for joining us today. I wanted to go kind of piggyback off the first speaker, the speaker that just went before me, and he talked about positive thinking. And I can definitely say that positive thinking has been so important in my career as an athlete. And it has made, it has done like wonders for me. So definitely look into that positive thinking, because it really does make a difference. We always say that championships are not just won on the field, but it's really won in your mind first. And that's where it all starts, is in your mind. So as we get started, I am going to go ahead and share my screen. Share. And I felt so bad because he's introducing me as Shot Diva, and I did not get to bring all my Shot Diva-ness today. Today has been one of those days where I have been on the phone and on meetings all day long, but when you're really doing something that you believe in and you really want to make a difference, it doesn't feel like work. Like, I'm really enjoying what I'm doing, and I'm so grateful to have this opportunity to talk to you all today. So what I want to start with today is talking about the power of influence. I know this is the Power Conference, and I think one of the big words that we've been hearing a lot lately is influence. You have these influencers on social media, and everybody's like, oh, I want to be an influencer. You get paid to influence people. But what does it really mean to be an influencer? Or what is influence? Like, really, what is that? And I want to talk about that today. So next, let's go over the definition of influence. Uh-oh, is it just going by itself? Sorry, hold on. Okay, there we go. All right, the definition of influence is the capacity to have an effect on the character development or behavior of someone or something of the effect of itself. And like the example they used was influence, television violence. So then we talk about the synonyms: effect, impact, control, sway, hold, power, authority, mastery, domination, supremacy, leadership, guidance, direction, pressure. Some of those words are very powerful and positive, but some of those words kind of have a negative tone to it. But they're all a part of influence. And then next is the verb definition of influence, is to have an influence. So it means you have an effect on someone. You can see all these words: determine, guide, control, form, shape, govern, decide, regulate, change, alter, modify. Some of the sway, coax, induce, entice, tempt, lure. So we have all these different examples of what it means to influence. And with influence, I believe there's really two main groups that you really have a lot of influence over. Is yourself and others. Because what you do, how you talk to yourself, how you deal with yourself, you influence yourself to do different things. Like during quarantine, the main thing we've been seeing on everybody's Instagram, it's like, man, I gotta stay away from the refrigerator. I'm eating all these snacks. But something in you kind of influenced you to put those snacks in your house. So you're influencing yourself by tempting yourself, putting these snacks in your house, and then we're like, okay, let me go outside and do some walking. Like eventually you kind of buy some gym equipment, and then you start to influence yourself to kind of go outside and do some walking. So that's kind of how we influence ourselves. But then also the main group that we influence is others. And one thing about others is you don't know who's watching you, and you really don't know who all you're influencing. And sometimes we are purposely influencing others, people that we coach, people we guide, people we have relationships with. But then there's a whole other group that you're influencing that you would never know, but they watch you from a distance. They take cues about what they're going to do by watching you, and you would never know them. They probably won't ever speak to you. Some of them are on social media. Some of them are distant friends or friends of friends. And you just never know. But at any given moment, you are influencing yourself and you are influencing others. And I call this the tools of influence, because these are things that we do and things that we actually can control that influence ourselves and influence others. The first one, and I think is really one of the most powerful ones, is your thoughts. How are you thinking about yourself? How are you thinking about others? Are you building yourself up, or are you building yourself down? Are you actually, your first comment when you meet someone, is it negative first, but your words say something different? So our thoughts are like the center of our influence, because what is it? As a man thinketh, so is he. So what we think really has a major influence on our words and on our actions. And so then we go to our words. It's like, what are you saying? Because your words, sometimes we talk to ourselves, and I'll include that into thoughts, but then sometimes what we think comes out. And those words that we say to other people, how are our words influencing those around us? Are our words building each other up? Are our words tearing each other down? Like, what are we doing with our words, and how are we using our words as influence to those who can hear us? And one thing about words, mostly your thoughts kind of really only has something to do with you. But your words, because you say them out loud, people hear them, you hear them, and others hear them. So your words are very important in the sphere of influence. And then last but not least is your actions. Because sometimes your thoughts people won't see, your words to some people may not mean a thing, but people are watching how you're acting. And I feel like actions are really the most powerful ones for those who are watching you for others. That's the most powerful influence tool that you have, are your actions. And people take cues from your actions. They are watching you and trying to figure out, how am I going about life? How am I living life? Because I'm seeing what this person is doing in their actions. I need to do this, or I don't need to do this. Well, they did this might be right for me. I'm not sure. But our actions is something that's out there on display for everyone. So our thoughts mostly influence ourselves, but our thoughts influence our words and our actions. Our words influence both ourselves and others, because people can hear our words and we hear our words. And our actions really affect others, and it also affects ourselves, because if we're not taking the proper actions to do certain things, of course, it's going to harm us. But also your actions is what people really use to gauge the kind of person you are, and your actions to see if you really are who you say you are. Your influence is your responsibility. And people think that, especially as coaches and as teachers and just leaders in your area, people who write books, like if you're a speaker, like your influence is your responsibility. So then my question is, what are you influencing people to do? Are you influencing people to better their lives? Are you influencing people to treat others equally? Or are you influencing people to be their very best, because you're out there being your very best and you're pouring into people in a positive way? Like, you are responsible for your influence. Since this is we're talking about church and Christ in this, I think one of my favorite verses is love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. And this is why influencing ourselves and influencing each other is so important, because God says we need to love each other as we love ourselves. And so if we're having a hard time loving others, we have to double check and see how we really ourselves, and how are we treating ourselves. Because that makes a difference. If we're having a hard time treating ourselves and loving ourselves, it's going to be really hard to transfer that. And then sometimes we may have some preferences, if we want to, let's call it that, that's keeping us from caring and loving others as we would ourselves. And this is where we have to check our hearts, because at the end of the day, you may think that you're influencing the proper way, but at the end of the day, if you know deep down inside that you didn't treat someone right, or you didn't give someone the same treatment as another person, you have to check your heart, because at the end of the day, that's where God is going to judge us, is by our hearts. You can say, well, I did this for this person, but he's going to ask you what was really in your heart, what was behind that influence. Why did you do that for that person? And so we are responsible for our influence. And I've learned this on a grand scale after winning the Olympics in 2016, because I got messages from people that I'd never known, and they was telling me how they watched me for years. And they loved how I presented myself. They loved how I talked. They did this. And people are telling me, because of you and because of what you said, I decided to go ahead and pursue my dream doing this. You encouraged me to do X, Y, and Z. And I don't know these people. But because I'm just living, I have a sphere of influence that I am responsible for. And I do my best to live my life in such a way to be the salt and light of the earth, that I am influencing others to be their best and to live and do right by each other. I saw this quote from John Maxwell, and it says, influence doesn't come instantaneously. It increases gradually. Nor does influence develop by an accident. Instead, it grows as we purposefully take action to earn and trust and win the respect of others. And I know, since we're mostly coaches, or at least I think we're mostly coaches in this thing, this kind of hit home for me, because we live in a world where some coaches take advantage of the opportunities of having great athletes. And sometimes these athletes grow up in not so well places. And then some coaches sell them on a dream that we're gonna get them here, get them there. And then really we just want them for the gain that I'm gonna gain from our program. But I think as coaches, as teachers, and as leaders, we have a responsibility to influence them to be great people in general. Because we know everyone's not going to make it to the league. Everybody's not going to be professional. But what people have the chance to be are great people. So while you're gaining the trust and you're earning the trust and you win the respect of these athletes, I don't think sometimes coaches forget what coaches really mean to the athletes. I have the opportunity that my dad is my coach. No, we don't always get along. It's my dad, he gets on my nerves. But in that process, I have learned that he only wants what's good for me. He tells me what he wants me to do and try to influence me to do certain things because he wants to see me thrive. He wants to see me be successful. And I think coaches, you have a special place in athletes' heart, because when you're training and you're trying to be your best, you are so vulnerable. You're very vulnerable. I don't know how many times I cried at practice because I'm trying to push myself to be my best. And I'm looking for you to influence me to keep going. I'm looking at you to keep, to build me up in this moment when I'm doubting myself. And your influence is so important, and it cannot be overlooked. Especially in the climate that we are in today, I think that thinking about your influence, even as small as for coaches, like who do you hang out with outside your athletes? Your athletes watch who you hang out with and who you talk to or who you talk about. And one thing that some coaches do that I kind of do want to bring up this a little bit, and that some things that we talk about is you may act one way in front of one group and then act another way in front of another group. And sometimes for that kind of sends two different signals for an athlete. And if I could call it a phrase, I would say code switching. You may talk like the slang and trying to be cool with your Black athletes, and then you change the total tone for your white athletes. And sometimes that can kind of ruin your influence, because now some of your athletes may question, like what is your intentions with that? And am I just being myself, or am I just trying to gain the trust of these athletes? And I think kind of watching how you interact with each group really matters with your athletes, and then gaining that trust, gaining that respect, and really having that positive influence in these athletes' lives. So the main questions that I want to leave with you today and have us to think about is, how are you being influenced? And I would say, when I ask this question, is there was a point in, I want to say in 2014, that I had to rethink my group of friends. I had to rethink my training group. I had to rethink everything, because I realized that everybody didn't have the same goals. They didn't have that positive thinking. They wasn't trying to do more and be their very best. I had to go back like, you know what? I'm not doing all the things that I wanted to do. And I had to really look at my circle of friends, my circle of influence, because just as much as you're influencing others, someone's influencing you. So who are those people that you are around and are influencing you? Are they influencing you to be better? Are they influencing you to think outside the box? Are they influencing you to kind of stay the same? Are they influencing you not to grow? Like, this is very important as we are trying to be our best every day. Because in my mind, I think all of us really wants to try to improve every single day, to be our very best, just to get a little bit better every day. But sometimes those who are around us and influence who can stunt our growth as individuals, as coaches, as teachers, and leaders. That is something you think you can control it because you don't hang around that person all the time, but you'll be surprised at how you are being influenced by those around you. And not just the people, it's what are you listening to? What TV shows are you watching? What songs are you listening to? All these things are influencing you. So for me, when I realized that my thinking was a little off, I really started listening to more sermons. I really started listening to more motivational, positive speaking. Some shows I just don't want to watch anymore because it's like, I'm going to have these thoughts in my head that I really don't need at this time. So really, how are you being influenced is such an important question to ask yourself. And then next is, how are you influencing? How are you influencing others? And for me, in my sphere, I want to encourage everyone to be their very best. And it doesn't mean you have to take leaps and bounds to be greater every single day. It starts with the smallest things. It starts as just being grateful when you wake up in the morning. It starts telling yourself, like, you know what, Michelle, today, girl, you're beautiful. Even though you don't have on makeup and your hair is not quite the way you want it, like, girl, you look good anyways. And how you speak to yourself and how you speak to others really make a difference. So I'm very open with all my social media about a lot of things that I do, because I do believe that a lot of people can learn by example. And because of what I do, I have been given a platform, and I am responsible for this platform and how I use it. And I'm very mindful and intentional about how I use my platform. And I see the benefits on what you can do, not just for your life, but for others, when you are mindful about how you influence and when you try to be a positive influence on each other. Because influence is very powerful. And your influence can make or break someone. And I always hope that we choose to really build somebody up instead of building each other down. But we have to start and look within to see what are we influenced by and how are we influencing people. And if we're not doing it the way that we can, that can be changed. That's something we can work on, something that we can improve on. And I think coming to conferences like this, when we're talking about different topics and you're learning and hearing from other people, is a way that you get to grow and become better so you can help others be better in this journey that we call life, that we all have to live together. Because I'm connected to you, you're connected to me. And we live this life together. I think, stop share. All right. And then with that, it's like when I talked about like, who are you influencing and how you're influencing? And I also want to add in there, check your intentions. Because sometimes our intentions of influence are really selfish and it's just for us. But if that intention isn't going to be what's best for the person that we're helping or using, we have to check those intentions. And it's really easy to get caught up with this person is going to help me make it to the top. But if it's not what's best for that person, we do have to double check that intention. Like, why are we doing this? Am I doing this just for personal gain? Or if I'm doing this and it's going to make a really positive difference in this person's life? And that, you know, that's something that we all have to consider in everything that we do. Because at the end of the day, when we talk to God after we leave this earth, he's going to ask us about those things. He's going to ask us what was really in your heart. And we want to make sure that we have lined up our thoughts, our words, and our actions to what his word says. Thank you, everyone, for joining me today. And I think we're open for a Q&A.
All right, Michelle. I don't know if you can hear me. I'm going to get my video turned on here shortly. But first thing, I want to ask a question. You mentioned, how are you being influenced? Would you just share with the audience some both positive ways that you think people can be influenced? So like, if they don't know, hey, here's some positive ways that I try to influence myself. And then also some negative ways that people may not, know, like, hey, I'm actually being influenced negatively by this and I don't even know it.
Yeah, I would say like some positive things. A big one for me is just acknowledging people. Acknowledging people when they walk in the room, saying hi to someone, letting someone know that I see you, because it's like, I feel like that right there is something we take for granted, is just saying hi to someone. And you never know that hi, saying hello, can influence and change someone's whole day around because they are actually acknowledged that day. And I think, and I always go for the opposite. Another way that that can influence people negatively is not acknowledging someone's presence. Like if you walk in the room and not speaking to no one, or you see someone in a corner and you really like, oh, they look like they're alone, I should probably speak, but then you don't. And then so people take those actions because someone might be watching you like, oh, they probably gonna speak to that person. Oh, nope, they not, they walk right by them. So if they didn't speak to them, I'm not gonna speak to them either. And you'd be surprised the cues. And I would even say another way is when we're in groups, who you choose to sit next to and who you always sit next to. And people take cues from that. They're like, okay, well, they always talk to this person. They don't talk to that person. Then I'm not going to talk to that person either. And it's really crazy when someone makes that difference and you see that one person go talk to this person, and the next thing you know, everybody is talking to that person. And it makes a big difference. And I think this is the little small things that you do can make the biggest difference.
Awesome. Okay, so we have one from Mallory. If you know you're around someone who is more of a negative influence, how do you know when to work to try to lift them up and make them better, or just walk away?
That's a really good question. For me, I would let somebody know that they're negative. I'm like, you know what I say? You being a Debbie Downer right now, your energy is bringing me down. Let's try to bring this up. And then after a couple attempts of bringing it up and trying to bring it up, but they steady pulling it down, I'm very vocal. I'm going to tell them like, listen, right now, I'm going to have to leave you alone with your negative attitude. When you figure it out, then we can talk about it. But sometimes you do just have to walk away, especially when there's toxic negative situations or relationships. Sometimes you do just have to walk away. And it's hard, it's not easy, but it's freeing when you're able to set boundaries for yourself and only allow certain people to have that type of access to affect your mood and to affect your energy, because that's important. What your energy and the things that you have is important. So you want to set those boundaries, and you'll be surprised by setting those boundaries, how people will turn around and really respect you and notice that you're not for this. So when they get into their negative moods, they will learn how to say to themselves or try to pick themselves up when they're around you.
Great answer. Coach Bierbauer wants to know, what sports psychology advice has worked best for you in throwing at the highest level? What things helped you with nerves and mindset of something as stressful and as intense as throwing for gold?
Yeah. For me, visualization, seeing it, like feeling it. Because they say that when you're visualizing, that the body doesn't know which one wasn't real and which one was real. Like after you envision it over and over and over in your head. So for me, visualization and positive talk. Those are the two things. Because instead of me coming to practice and saying, like, Michelle, like, you're so slow today, like, you're not going to get this technique. Like, I always say, like, come on, Michelle, you got this. All right, Michelle, all you have to do is this. Like, we're going to hold this back for a half a second. We know how to do this. Like, we're going to get this right this time. And that has been a major difference for me because I've been there in my mind. I've seen it. So when I won gold, I wasn't nervous because I've been here before. I pictured it in my head. It's a little different, but for me, I look at it, the ring is the same. My shot put doesn't change. So I'm gonna have on my uniform. I'm gonna be in a 7'2" circle. And I'm gonna have a 4K, which is an 8.8 pound shot put. All of that is the same. I just have to go in there and do what I know to do.
That's awesome. That's awesome. All right. Kurt wants to know, are there any spiritual disciplines you practice daily that help you influence others? Well, one that I talk about often actually on my social media is reading Proverbs. Because I feel like, we need that wisdom and guidance. And you'll be surprised how Proverbs really tells you and teaches you how to live your life. One of my favorite verses in Proverbs, I can't tell you which one it is because it's mentioned several times. The Bible says, do not argue with the fool. And when you realize that there's certain things that you just don't need to do, you free yourself from that. So really knowing what the word says about any and every situation and going to that first definitely helps me practice what I do, because now I know what to do. I know how to handle myself in this situation. And I think that for me, that's made a really big difference. That's great. Yeah, definitely one of my favorite books in the Bible as well, Proverbs. Okay, so how do you address coaches that build their influence through improper boundaries, such as friendships and stuff like that?
Well, I would say, for me, I'm very honest and I'm very straightforward. If I feel like some lines have been crossed, I would say it. And I think that's one thing sometimes we're scared of, is to tell the truth and to put up those boundaries. Because I would say that I've been in a situation like this, now that I'm thinking about it, where I was working with someone at a gym and they got a little too comfortable. And I was like, hey, time out, pause. Let's talk about this right here. Like, we have a working relationship and this is what I pay you to do. And this is what I need you to do. Anything outside of that is not appropriate for this type of relationship. And then in that moment, that person did get mad, but I had to let them know, like, hey, this is the kind of relationship we have, and this is what I'm expecting. And then if there's something else that you want or need from this relationship, we could talk about it. But right now, these are my boundaries. And if we can't work this out, then I'm gonna have to walk away. And unfortunately, I walked away from that relationship because that person had their lines blurry. They couldn't decide what side of the lines they wanted to be on, and I had to walk away from that.
Awesome. Okay, how to keep a positive attitude and keep doubt away when you start feeling the pressure when closer to competition?
Yes, this is going to sound like the simplest but hardest thing to do, is that you choose what thoughts you're going to dwell on. Because negative thoughts will come, but it's up to you to dwell on those negative thoughts. So getting ready for the Olympics prior to the Olympics, I had a herniated disc in my back. And I was bummed. I really was. I was like, how am I going to have a back injury this close to the Olympics? I don't have time to have surgery and recover. Like, I don't have time for this. But I had to tell myself, Michelle, we could still put in the work. We could still move forward. Just because this is in the story, doesn't mean this is how the story is going to end. Because we don't know the outcome of the stories. And I know that in the Bible, it says that he works everything out for our good. So I chose to switch on my faith and I start to choose to think about the positive things. And even when I got to the competition, I was off on my first 5 throws and I knew that I needed to wait for like a half a second in my technique so I can throw further. And I knew I could win, and I'm sitting in second place. And it's easy to freak out in that moment, like, come on, I got one more throw, and I got to do X, Y, and Z, and do this, this, and this. And you kind of take yourself out, because I know that competitions are won in your mind before you actually do it. So what I did during that time was like, okay, Michelle, you've done this 100 times before. You know how to stay back and stay over your right to create that power. I said, this is, you're going to do it on this throw, and this is what we're working on. And I stayed consistent with that. And then the thought would pop up like, but what if you don't? But then I'll say, but what if I do? So this, you may have to have those inner conversations with yourself. I talk to myself all the time, but it's healthy. I'm not crazy, I promise. But you have to have that inner dialogue with yourself to keep building yourself up when those negative thoughts, because they're going to come. But if you choose to dwell on those thoughts, that's what's going to overtake you. And if you don't, and you build it up with positivity, that's what you're going to have.
Great. Yeah. And so, you know, to all of our listeners, John Gordon and now Michelle really saying very similar things and talking to yourself. And it's something I talk to my athletes about all the time. Negative thoughts will come. That's going to automatically come. You have to have the ability to fight those. And the only way you fight them is with positive thoughts. You know, you fight the negative thoughts with, hey, yes, I can. I got this. And that's very, very important, because if you don't have something to fight it with, you're going to believe the lie. And you're going to believe that, you know what, I'm not good enough. I can't do this. So I encourage you guys to teach your athletes and teach yourself, you know, fight the negative thoughts. They will come. They're very natural. Fight them with positive thoughts.
You just reminded me of one thing. What I also did, I actually had a necklace made for myself that said I can on it after I got hurt, because I needed a daily reminder for myself. So every time I look in the mirror, I see I can. And sometimes those little things like that are little reminders. So when you said that, I forgot that I had that. But I made a reminder for myself. I later on, of course, I have the necklaces and I sell them, but I made that necklace specifically for me in that moment to help build myself up. So when every time I get in those negative thoughts, I remember I have something on me that tells me that I can do this.
Great. That's great. And for all you guys in the audience, you know, it may not be a necklace, but it may be a little card you make and you hand out to your athletes. I can. It could be, you know, something they put on their locker. You know, it could be a sticky note. I can. And so something easy, great takeaway from Michelle that you can implement tomorrow with your athletes, just reminding them. So, all right, Michelle, well, we're gonna wrap up. I just want to say thank you so much for sharing with us. You did a great job. Really enjoyed your energy and just teaching us how important influence is. And it's our responsibility, you know. And so thank you so much. Want to wish you the best as you continue to train. I thought it was awesome. You're gonna train for another gold at the next Olympics. So we're all wishing you the best. We're behind you, and we're very grateful you joined us tonight.
Yes, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
All right, have a great night.
Bye.
Bye-bye. All right, guys. So we're gonna move into some time to again thank our sponsors. Let me get my video rolling here. As soon as I can get turned on, I'm on, and we're rolling. Again, what I want to do is not only do I want to go back over our sponsors, I want to mention the contact points. I know a lot of you guys, you may not have these contacts at these great companies that are behind us. So I want to be able to give you these names, and then if you need the contact number, I want to be able to give you those as well. Because I know a lot of times, you know, you say, hey, look, I don't even know how to get in touch with somebody from Alico or from Sorinex or from Powerlift. So, you know, thankfully, we have the contacts of those people and the people that can help you, whether you need, you know, momentous supplements, or you need, you know, equipment from one of our companies, or if you need a force plate from Hawkin Dynamics. So kind of going back through, Ben Watson, he'll be the contact for Hawkin Dynamics, and you guys just type this in the Q&A, and I'll get to it before the night's over. He's actually also helping us run Power Conference here. He's kind of our IT guy. So Ben can help you guys with Hawken Dynamics. Powerlift, Mike Richardson. He's a rep that I've worked with for a long time. He can definitely help you guys with any equipment from Powerlift. Catapult, which is a company that makes GPS tracking work all over the world. Jennings Hester is a rep that can help you guys with Matrix Fitness. Kelly Newhouser was a great friend of mine. He actually trained me when I was in college. He's now doing great stuff with Matrix. Sorinex, Dan McKim. You might know Dan. He's got hilarious parody videos on Twitter, but great guy. I've known him for a long time. He can help you with anything you need from Sorinex. From Eleiko, Derek Schultz. Just met Derek a few weeks ago, and he actually knows Goody Goodlow. Mentioned that he was in Goody's, I think, youth group back in the day in Dallas. So Derek is working now for Eleiko. Therabody, which makes Theragun. If you guys are familiar with Theragun, Paul Caldwell, who used to be at Athletes Performance when I was there as well years ago. So he's the contact there. Play Flooring, and now they're branched off. They're doing a lot more stuff as well now. Dave Turner, who's been supportive of the Power Conference, really won. Great company in Play. And then Momentous, which is an unbelievable nutrition supplementation company, Chris DeSanto, who is a great friend of mine. If you guys need any of that, let me know, and I'll get you those numbers. A few more things before we get into our last speaker of the night. You know, I mentioned in several videos leading up to Power Conference that we wanted to be known for a conference that gives back, and really gives back to causes that are going on in our world right now. You know, we want to be known as a conference that's generous. And so really the majority of all the funds that we've raised through, you know, the conference registration fees, through all of our great sponsors, giving us the funds to do this, we're going to give back, you know, a ton of that to causes. There's two causes that we've already elected to give back to, and we're also open to causes that you guys may be passionate about. You know, you can type that in the chat, and we'll definitely take that into consideration. But two causes we're going to definitely give back to. Number one, the Equal Justice Initiative. And this is a group that was founded by Brian Stevenson. It's one of the nation's most effective legal advocacy organizations. They have major impact on social justice reform. You know, we're going to give back to them in light of everything that's going on in our country right now. We want to be known as being a part of the change to better. And that's really, you know, where the Power Conference was created initially. Anthony and we had this thought, and instead of complaining of like, hey, you know what, this conference we want is not out there, we came together and we created it. And great people got behind it, great sponsors, you know, coaches that are on this meeting right now have been with us from day one, supporting us. And so it's grown and it's grown and it's grown, just like John Gordon said earlier in the night. You know, the first one was 25 people, then it was 50, then it was 75, then it was 100, 125, and now we have, you know, over 220 attendees registered for this event. So we want to help be the change, and we want to walk the walk. We don't want to talk about it. We want to walk it, and giving back is part of walking that walk. The second one is the NAACP Legal Defense and Educational Fund. This is the country's first and foremost civil and human rights law firm. It was founded in 1940 by Thurgood Marshall, and their mission has always been transformative to achieve racial justice, equality, and an inclusive society. And so we're going to give back to those two nonprofits. And again, we want to hear from you guys if there's something near and dear to your heart. We're open to giving, and we're gonna give back, and that's what we're gonna be about. So I wanted to make sure I mentioned that to you guys. And then lastly, guys, just continue to invite. You know, this is recorded, so anybody that hasn't signed up yet, hey, they can sign up, you know, until this whole thing's over next week. And then even after that, they can sign up and they can get all these recordings. Obviously, it's only $10. And so we didn't want to charge much at all. We just wanted to be an impact, and we wanted to be able to give back to these causes. So you guys can use the hashtag Power Conference 2020, when talking about this, and let's continue to try to get coaches, to get leaders, to get athletes plugged into Power Conference, and let's make an impact on those folks. So here we go. We're going to get into our last speaker of the night. And I'm fired up about this speaker. You guys are gonna just be thrilled with his energy, with his stories. Gary Kramer is the life coach for the University of Alabama, Crimson Tide. Gary started mentoring me when I was in college at the University of Alabama, Birmingham. And he's also started an organization called 5Q Coaching. 5Q Coaching is very, very similar to what we're doing here at the Power Conference, and I'm honored to be on the board of directors at 5Q Coaching. We're gonna make a ton of impact in coaches around the world, man, I'm fired up about that. But without further ado, I give you my mentor, somebody who's walked me through every important decision of my life, Gary Kramer. Welcome, Gary.
Wow. Hey, gang. It's good to be with you tonight. And I've just got one thought for you. If my PowerPoint will work. There we go. One thought. Here's all I want you to remember tonight. Never let the roar of the crowd or the accolades on your resume be mistaken as a measure of your influence or impact upon others. In the 1960s, U.S. Naval Captain Charlie Plumb flew F-4 fighter jets off the USS Kitty Hawk. On his 75th mission, 5 days before he was supposed to go home, he was shot down in Viet Cong territory, tortured, imprisoned, and would spend 2,103 days in an 8-foot by 8-foot cell in the communist country of Vietnam. Some years after he was released, he was eating lunch in a restaurant in Kansas City when he had that feeling that someone across the room was looking at him, staring at him. And eventually, as he would share the story, the man got up, came over to his table, looked down at him and pointed at him and said, "You're Captain Charlie Plumb. You were part of the USS Kitty Hawk. You were shot down over enemy territory and you spent 6 years as a prisoner of war." Well, needless to say, Captain Plumb was perplexed at how this person that he didn't know knew so much about him. And so he looked at him and he said, "Sir, would you mind me asking, how do you know all that? How do you know all those details about me and about what I've done and where I've served and how I was imprisoned?" The man replied by saying, "On the day that your plane went down, I was the one who packed your parachute." You see, Captain Plumb and this unnamed parachute packer lived on the same ship, but they never met. If you know anything about life in the military, you probably understand that enlisted men don't speak to officers unless they're spoken to first. Officers would spend many of their evenings in socializing in the officers' quarters, a place that most enlisted men were never allowed to come. And while the pilots do most of their work above deck, where they could have a vast view of things and even have the spray of the ocean come upon their face at times, the parachute packer did his work down in the bowels of the ship, down where it was humid, where it was hot, and where it was hidden away from any sunlight. If you Google fighter pilot, you'll find plenty of articles on courage, on valor, on boldness, on heroes. If you Google parachute packer, you'll find nothing more than a definition in Wikipedia and a YouTube video put out by the US military as to how to properly pack a military parachute. Yet, on this day, I would presume that if you were to ask Captain Plumb, who was the most influential man on the day he went down, he would definitely say it was the parachute packer. Never let the roar of the crowd or the accolades on your resume or not on your resume be mistaken as a measure of your influence or your impact upon others. This evening, what I want to do, I've listened to all the talks, and by the way, I just want to say, Michelle, Ricky, John, fabulous jobs. I've got notes that I've taken, and I hope you don't mind me stealing them and giving you credit, but great stuff. But I feel like I'm preaching to the choir in some form or fashion. But I want to affirm those of you who are the parachute packers in our world. The folks who have spent most of your life helping others achieve their dreams, because that's really what a parachute packer does. A parachute packer finds their greatest pleasure when they have empowered others to achieve their desired mission. Now, I want you to hit the panic button for just, the pause button for just a minute. Not the panic button, the pause button. I want you to hit the pause button, and I want you for just a moment to think about the people that have greatly impacted you. And chances are the greatest influencers in your life were people that I have never heard of. And people that most of the folks who are listening in tonight have never heard of. Yet when I think about the vibe of our culture, in many ways, we've been conditioned to think that influence, that impact, that persuasion, that those things come with a title, that those things come with when you get your name on a book as the author, that they somehow come when you find yourself securing so many listeners to your podcast, or you get enough followers on your Twitter account that you actually get the blue verification check mark. And like a moth on a hot summer night, drawn to the warm glow of a back porch light, we have a propensity, all of us have a propensity to be drawn to the applause and the accolades of the crowd. Yet the folks who made the greatest impact in our lives were not even known by the crowd. You see, parachute packers don't get their glory from the roar of the crowd, but rather by empowering others to achieve their dreams. And over the course of my life, I've had a number of parachute packers, but one that stands out more than any other may be the most unlikely parachute packer you could have ever chosen. Mike Anderson. At the time I met Mike Anderson, he was a college student. He was hired to be our 7th grade soccer coach at my junior high school. He was given the job, frankly, because nobody else wanted it. But Mike Anderson came into my life at just the right time, gang. You see, Mike came into my life when I was relegated to the purgatory of fashion. When my mom bought me pants, she had to buy me these pants that were called Huskies. If you've never had to wear Huskies, you could never imagine the pain of those of us who did. Huskies, in a roundabout way, were nothing more than fat kid jeans. And to make matters worse, for some reason, Huskies never came in normal colors. They came in sky blue, putrid green, dingy brown. I mean, if a kid like me, who was already self-conscious about the fact that his thighs rubbed together, needed any more degradation, the colors that they made Husky jeans in screamed out to everyone, "Hey guys, look at the fat kid." Mike came into my life at a great time. At the same time, when Mike came into my life, my athletic career was not exactly stellar. To this day, I may be the only kid that has ever been cut from Little League baseball. Not once, but twice in tryouts. That's right. Ari Baker and Son Hardware, who sponsored the team in our little town of 400 people, bought 18 uniforms for a team that fielded 9 through 12-year-olds. And when all of those uniforms were filled, they would line us up on left field as they chose the new guys coming onto the team. And they would simply stand you on right field, and this is their encouragement. Hey, guys, the team's over there. We want to encourage you guys to come back next year and try out again. I challenge you to try that today and see how that goes. And by the way, I went home crying to my dad, who was out in his garden. He loved gardening. And lo and behold, I'm like, Dad, they cut me again. I got cut again. He says, hey, come over here and help me weed these tomatoes. We'll get them next year. You know, I sometimes wonder where Dr. Phil was when I was growing up. But my mom and dad didn't have time to coach. They didn't have time to serve on community boards. They were both blue collar, hourly paid, hardworking people who were trying to pay the mortgage and keep food on the table. And on top of that, Mike Anderson came into my life at a very good time because things were really not good at home for me. My father's affinity with alcohol meant there were many times when my mom would load us all up in the evening, put us in the car, and we would begin driving the circuit to see which bar Dad had stopped at that night after work, and so we could bring him home. There were many nights I'd cry myself to sleep, not knowing what would happen or who was going to be there in the morning. And there were at least 2 or 3 times I remember when Mom moved us out because it got so bad, and we actually moved with a family that kept foster children. Mike Anderson knew none of that. So as an overweight, not pleasing to the eye, seeking affirmation 7th grader, I went out for junior high soccer. Number one, I thought it would take my mind off of the junk that was going on at home. Number two, I felt maybe it would be a kind of place where I could find acceptance and be a part of something. And number three, and probably the most important thing, I knew that it would be safe. There were no cuts. I would make the team. And then I'll never forget the day that changed my life. The day when this young, frizzy-haired college student coach came up to me, put his hand on my shoulder, and he said, hey, Kramer, I think you're going to be a player. And I believed him. I actually believed him. I believed him because he believed in me. And little did he know, little did Coach Mike Anderson know that those few words would change the trajectory of my life. Because I would become a player. Not the best player, but as far as I know, the first soccer player and one of only a handful of student athletes to come out of my high school who ever received an athletic scholarship. A scholarship that, unlike my parents and my grandparents and all of my family before them, afforded me to be the first one to get a college degree. Mike Anderson never knew that when he blew wind into the sails of a pudgy, messed up 13-year-old kid, that one of his most unlikely candidates would get to play in college, ultimately get a degree, and then to think about the fact that I had the privilege of pouring my life into some of the most amazing coaches and athletes of their respective sports around the world. One coach who you've never heard of had more influence in my life and even in the life of my children than any recognizable name you would ever be familiar with. Never let the roar of the crowd or the accolades on your resume be mistaken as a measure of your influence or your impact upon others. What's the benefit of being the kind of coach that packs parachutes? What's the benefit of being the kind of leader who gets your greatest joy out of seeing others succeed and achieve their dreams and achieve their goals? Well, first of all, I can promise you that those who are parachute packers have pretty good health because they're not playing the comparison game. They're not looking around comparing their situation with someone else's situation. They're not getting caught up in what's fair or what's not fair. They don't define their value by what conference they're coaching in or how their title appears to be on the letterhead. Author Kobe Yamada once wrote, "Embrace your uniqueness. Time is too short to be living someone else's life." What a great quote. What a great truth. But overall, and above all, those who pack parachutes are not stressed out, trying to climb the ladder, worried about looking over their shoulder. They're just doing what they're due, and they're doing it well, and they're getting their greatest pleasure out of someone else's success. The second benefit that comes to us is it's deeply satisfying. You know, rings lose their bling. If you know that, we have a few of them. I've got a few of them, but they lose their bling. Trophies eventually tarnish. In fact, at our place, we actually had one time the crystal trophy that we'd won for the national championship, and one of the parents was there looking at it, bumped the table, and literally the trophy toppled over and the $40,000 crystal ball at the top shattered all over the floor. That quick. That's how fast that stuff happens. As much money as you'll ever make, someone will always make more. If money were to satisfy, Beverly Hills would be one of the happiest places in the world. But I can tell you this, that the call from a former player telling you he's getting married, the photos that he sends you of their kids, the call they make to you because they want to know and get your perspective on a promotion or a job opportunity or simply need your perspective on something, is something that never grows old. It's deeply satisfying. And finally, to your benefit, expands your influence. It expands your influence. Coach Mike never envisioned that his comment to that little 13-year-old kid would pave the way for not only me to get my college degree, but to also get a doctorate one day. And even more, his comments paved the way for my wife and I to raise 3 children, one of whom is a dentist, one is an engineer, and one is a college professor. All because one coach said, "I think you're going to be a player." On top of that, parachute packing is contagious. As you pack parachutes, others start packing parachutes with you. It creates a whole nother culture in the sphere to which you're influencing. Well, before we call it a wrap tonight, I want to leave you with a challenge. I want to leave you with a call to action. If you were able to come home with me to my parents' place near Corning, New York, you'd turn off a 2-lane road and you'd go up a gravel road for about 2 miles. And by the way, if I had longer, I'd tell you the story of the transformation that took place in my family. My mom and dad are this year celebrating their 59th wedding anniversary. It's transforming what happened in our lives. If you were to drive up our road about 2 miles, across the road from our house, you'd see a fence post that had been put up there by Ted Lewis. Ted built that fence to keep his cows in, and every 10 to 12 feet, he'll have a fence post. And if you were driving up that road and you were to see one of the native box turtles that had been put on top of that fence post that Ted had put into the ground, there's one thing you would know about that fence post and that turtle that's on that fence post. And the one thing you know about that turtle is that turtle didn't get there by himself. Someone else helped it get there. The view may be great for the turtle. He might be able to see for quite a distance, but someone helped him get there. Someone packed his parachute. Someone was instrumental in helping him get to his destination. So here's your challenge. 1, I want you to write a personal note to someone in your life who has packed your parachute. It might have been a junior high coach for you. It might have been a neighbor. It might have been a Sunday school teacher, a high school coach, a teacher, I don't know. But even as I was sharing my story, you were thinking about yours. I want you to act on that. I want you to take the opportunity. And you coaches, you all like deadlines. I want you to do this tomorrow and have it done. And I want you to write a personal note expressing to them what you have appreciated about their influence in your life. And then I want you to keep packing parachutes. It's worth it. It's worth it. It's the only way to coach. It's the only way to live. It's the only way I want to do life. And as I pack parachutes, I find there's a lot of people that keep packing mine. Never let the roar of the crowd or the accolades on your resume be mistaken as a measure of your influence or impact upon others.
Thank you so much, Gary. I appreciate it. I was thinking, like you said, about people in my life that have packed my parachute, and I just want to share a quick story to everybody about that. About how impactful a coach can be when he puts those wins into your sails. So it was my sophomore year at UAB, and I remember I didn't get a red shirt in my freshman year, but I didn't play much at all either. I might have played a little bit on kickoff return. And we came in after the season, and Woodrow Lowe, who was a University of Alabama great, played a lot of years in the NFL. He was my linebackers coach. And we were going to go over our goals. And I said, Coach Lowe, my goal is to start next year. And he looked at me as serious as could be. He said, Zach, I think you can be all conference next year. And I was like, wow. And that's all I needed. My work ethic, my belief, my desire, it went through the roof. And guess what? I was all conference my sophomore year because Woodrow Lowe said he believed I could be all conference. And so I want to challenge you coaches out there to find those athletes, to put that win in their selves. Tell them that you believe in them. Tell them specifically, hey, I think you can do this exactly or that. And sometimes, like Gary said, that's all they need to chase it and go get it. And you can change the trajectory of their life, just like Gary's was, just like mine was, and just like a lot of you guys as well. So let's open it up for a few questions for Coach Kramer here. If anybody has them, go ahead and type them into the chat, and we'll get going.
Or Zach, I'd be interested in people just posting their parachute packer, who they thought of. We don't know their name, but hey, throw their name up there. Put their name up in lights for the first time, perhaps.
That's awesome. Let's do it. So as we wait for some of these to come in, Gary, I just want to kind of go back to some of the things that you said. As a parachute packer, and being behind the scenes, and really living for someone else's, highlight, what would you say some of the key characteristics or values that it takes to become that person if we're not there yet?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think first and foremost, you need to know who you are, and know that you're not looking for your significance from what you do. When you're free to be identified in correlation with how you've been made, how you've been wired, and the one who created you, as we've been hearing all night tonight, I think it's a key factor. John referred to it. Michelle talked about it. I think the first and foremost, when I start out knowing who I am, I'm not looking for anything else to identify me. It's not wins and losses. It's not coaches that think I'm a great guy or a bad guy. I just live my life and seek to live by the principles of how I've been wired according to my faith and according to the one who created me. And I think when we're free from that first and all, and we know who we are, especially if we know who we are, I always refer to myself as being in Christ. I'm a follower of Jesus. I'm not a very religious person, but he wasn't either. But I'm a follower of the Nazarene, the one who I think modeled everything about this for me. You think of the humility that he had to demonstrate. Whether you agree with the Christian worldview or not, the real story is this, that the one who came left everything he had. Whether you believe that or not, that's the story. And gave it up so that those of us who had nothing could gain it all. That's crazy. So he was my model, Zach, of all things. And we see that. But I think as well, I've had coaches throughout my career that have shown me that as well. I think humility, I think the ability to listen, to not be talking, but actually answering questions and listening to the questions my athletes and my coaches are asking me. Because sometimes we can talk and we're not really addressing them. And I think we as coaches can listen a lot better, a whole lot better, so that when we do speak, we're answering the questions that are being asked, or we're helping. I find myself many times helping them raise those questions. Like John was saying earlier in his talk, I think, there's a lot of fear out there, right? Even now, college kids that are, let's face it, 18 to 22-year-olds, we're all kind of narcissistic and self-centered, right? But 18 to 20-year-olds, that's the extreme time. And so right now, all they're thinking about is whether or not they're going to play. They're not thinking about stock market. They're not thinking about the decisions that have to be made in the White House. They're not thinking about the doctors and the emergency. They're thinking about playing. And so we've got to help them address those fears and raise those questions and help them expand their perception so that they see bigger than themselves. But that comes by simply engaging, hearing their fears, and asking them questions and pulling that out of them. So I think you got to be a good listener, and you got to have great humility.
That's great. That's great. Something that resonated with me that you said early in that part was identity. We have to know our identity is not in who we coach for. It's not in the conference we coach for, the team, how many championships. And I want to share a quick story. I know we're getting to the end here, but Gary, it was you that really helped me as I was cut from the Green Bay Packers, which was my lifelong dream. And I was driving home from Green Bay to Alabama, and I was crying because I thought my dream was over. And I'd really wrapped myself up in football. And it was you that said, Zach, your identity is not in this game. You're so much more than this game. Your identity is who you are in Christ. Your identity is how you treat others. Your identity is your character and how you live your life. And, it stuck with me for a lifetime. And I've never since then associated my identity with football or even with the team or the conference or the wins. My identity is simply how I treat others. And I want to be known as a coach who packs parachutes. And I just want to say, thank you for helping me understand that my identity is never going to be wrapped up in a game or in a school or a conference. And to all the coaches out there, be you, man, and women, just be right where you are and make a difference, because at the end of the day, when we're all done coaching or all done leading, we're going to look back and the question isn't going to be about those trophies or those rings. The question is going to be, how many lives was I able to impact in a positive way? And I want to encourage you guys to start that journey of start to impact life after life after life for the fifth quarter for life.
That's right. And I had one coach, a coach that retired. He was a track coach in the SEC, very, very, very accomplished track coach. He was at Arkansas for many years. So if you know anything about their track program, phenomenal. Came to us for a while, retired. And as soon as he retired, he and his wife, he let her pick the vacation spot. They went to Yellowstone, rode snowmobiles, and first day hit a tree and she was killed. And I did their service. I did a memorial for the track team and for the coach. And I'll never forget what he's told the kids. He said what he never realized about his wife was that when he took a new job, all he ever did was change the color of his shirt. And she did all the rest. And I thought, wow, what a perspective. But I mentioned that to say this, guys. The roar of the crowd and the color of the shirt is not what matters. Now, when we talk about knowing who you are and not letting the game identify you, Zach will be the first to tell you that I'm the most competitive dude out there. And I feel like if we aren't giving our best and we're not giving excellence and if I don't want to win, and when we play Missouri, Zach, if I don't want to beat you guys, something's wrong with me. Because I'm not glorifying God through the platform he's given me. Now, I don't control the score and I don't control what happens at the end, but with everything in me, we're going to get, just because I don't get my identity from it doesn't mean I don't have passion for it. And that's a key thing to really grasp. That's a good balance there that you need to come to.
No doubt. No doubt. All right, before we finish this, I want to voice some of these parachute packers, Coach Kramer.
Yes, sir. Let's hear their names.
So Mallory has Megan Young. Kennedy Hill has Brian Neese, my high school strength coach. John Bierbauer. He's got Coach Ramsey, Coach Bedoni, and most importantly, my dad, David Bierbauer. Anthony Blevins has my dad and George Pugh. Pugh recruited me as well. Karen has Coach Renee Zellner, head track and field coach. Harper, 6 national champions, packed my parachute. That is awesome. Tanner Hull has Dr. Pat Ivy. Brian has Craig Timmons, Dixie State University. So awesome to voice those parachute packers, and I'm sure there's a lot more. And Gary, again,
awesome.
so thankful for you. You did a great job. Really, really appreciate it. And I know tons of people will be impacted by your talk tonight.
A great thing. Privileged to be here, guys. Go get them. Live it out.
All right. Have a great night, Gary. All right, guys, we're going to wrap up here at the end. Before we do that, I just want to remind all of you guys about next Tuesday night. So super excited. We have more great speakers coming your way for the Power Conference. We're going to kick things off with Leanne Blinn, who is the Director of Athletic Performance at Arizona State University. Following her, we'll have Coach Louis Caralla, who's the Director of Athletic Performance for football at Georgia Tech. Then we'll have Greg Adamson, who is coaching at the University of Tennessee. Greg's been with the Power Conference since day one. Excited to hear from Greg. We'll have Anthony Blevins, who is the assistant DB coach for the New York Football Giants. Great friend of mine. We both went to UAB. Excited about Coach Blev sharing with us. And then to finish next Tuesday night, we'll have Michael Chapman, who's also been a part of Power Conference since day one. Mike is at Stanford. He's the Director of Athletic Performance for the Stanford basketball team. And so fired up for that as well. But you guys have a great night. Make an impact. We look forward to seeing you Tuesday. And again, invite more people. All these are recorded so we can go back and watch them. And then we have 2 more nights next Tuesday and next Thursday to be impacted by these great speakers. Have a great night. We'll see you soon.